Right, guys, we are live, officially live, not on Zoom anymore. We are now live on StreamYard. God bless this duck. This, I think, is a much better improvement. And you guys tell us what you think. What do you think of the setup? What do you think of the audio, video, all that good stuff? So, anyway, once again, everybody, don't forget to need those super chats. Don't forget to like, share, obviously subscribe, click the bell, patreon.com/break the rules, support this thing so it can grow. Anyway, we are talking about psychedelics today. Back with us, we have the great and powerful Father Owen Cyclops. Not father as in the priest, but father as in an actual father. Owen, you have participated in something that a lot of people are quite envious of as far as what they're able to get
And
out of life today.
fetishizing, as I just
Yeah,
said.
fetishizing, exactly. But you're in it. You are in the game right now. You have a beautiful son. And before we get started, I want to ask about your comic. I want to ask about the charity with the stickers. And I also want to ask about the son. So first, on to the son. How's the entire family? How's Mrs. Cyclops and all that? Let's get
What
started
are we
with
to
that.
describe it, Lev, in the game? Like fatherhood is.
I'm in the biological game officially. It's official.
Nice.
Starting out strong. Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. It's going really well. It was pretty crazy at first. The first like 2 months were insane. Kind of perfectly fit with the holidays. Kind of restarting the studio operation here, but yeah, man, it's going really well.
Excellent. And next we have DMT Quest, aka John Chavez. We've known each other for several years now. You've been really big in the, just this whole world about finding out what exactly this is all about, what reality is all about, what all these altered states of consciousness are all about, not just including DMT and psychedelics, but also the internal stuff as well. So I would love for you to get a little bit into that. But first, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your books and all that, and the documentary.
Yeah, man. I mean, we released a DMT Quest documentary in January of this year, so almost a year ago. And I think we're tracking almost at 700,000 views on YouTube. So you guys got to share it out, get the numbers up, man. Spread the word that there is some legitimate research going into, I guess, the biomechanisms of altered states and transcendental states and the human potential. So, yeah, I wrote two books, Questions for the Lion Tamer 1 and 2, and they basically just focus on the biomechanics of altered states and supernormal states of being, and just tying in the human potential with all that. So, yeah, we're just continuing to chug forward. Hopefully, we can get another episode out, another documentary out in 2022, and fund some research and really just continue pushing the needle forward.
Excellent. And by the way, the links to Owen's charity comics, all that, and as well as DMT Quest's books and the video I just posted in the chat, all of that can be found in the description below. So go there and you're going to find all that stuff. And last but not least, Gnostic Informant. You have been incredibly hot, incredibly fiery recently on our Twitter streams, which we are going to have actually, I wouldn't even say after this, because it's still going to be a part of this particular stream, but we're going to transition into Twitter Spaces at a certain point and invite you, the audience, to join us. I'm going to post the link to that as well, so you guys get a chance to speak. But Gnostic Informant, for those who don't know, make them know. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Neil. I do have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gnostic Informant. I make videos about psychedelics, about history, mythology, comparative religion, the Bible, Christianity, Islam, all that good stuff. But yeah, psychedelics is definitely a key role into what I like to focus on, because it plays a huge role in our spirituality and our growth. And there's a lot to unpack here. It's gonna be fun.
Excellent. So the title of this stream is whether psychedelics are a trap or whether they're a cure, and it could be somewhere in the middle. So I'm not expecting binary answers. We are a very progressive stream. We don't believe in binaries over here. I mean, no, that's a lie. But anyway, I want to get this. Let's see. Well, let's actually start from Gnostic. Let's start with you. Where do you see, and I know like you could say, well, this psychedelic does this psychedelic does that, but in general, where would you say, if you were to be looking at the best psychedelics, like the psychedelics that have created the best outcome for people as you see, can you tell us a little bit about those and whether they may be a trap or may not be a trap at all.
Well, I know that there's a lot of studies on psilocybin mushrooms in particular, helping people with speech problems, with mental health issues. And I'm not an expert on that, so I don't want to get too much into what they do and what they don't do. But I will say, from my own experience, someone who's not an expert, someone who just has their own experiences, my own evidence of my life, DMT has been a huge, huge life changer for me. I mean, I consider in my life there's a BCAD moment in my life where my eyes were opened up to different mentality, I guess you would say, when it's trying DMT and exploring with DMT. And I can even just give a little trip report real quick. Well, this is one time. This wasn't my first time doing it, but this was the first time I ever broke through. And I'll tell this reason. I'll tell the story for a reason. I'm actually getting to a point. So I'll keep it brief too. I saw this being that looked like Brahma, and it's floating, and it floated up to me with, like, you know, the normal, the geometric shit and the crazy colors and lights and but we had this like telepathic communication going on. And this is all in my mind, right? This is what DMT does. It's not that you're going up, you're kind of going inward, right? Anyways, long story short, it gave me an experience that actually wanted me to explore spirituality, religions, who we are, philosophy, what's the point of all this, and also sort of makes you aware that this is all this universe that we're in is weird. Like, there's this like understanding that instantly happens on DMT where you just like, this is something you don't notice this without the DMT. Like, I can't explain it. But basically what I'm getting at is, like, for me, DMT gave me a not a purpose, but like it sort of opened up my eyes in a sense where it caused me to see things in a different light that made me want to explore what truth is, what life is, what everything is, what God is, all that stuff. All those questions came to me from experimenting with DMT in particular.
And I know that Owen, out of all the people here, maybe except for Gio, Owen is the one who would probably disagree with a lot of views on psychedelics that you guys have, which is why I first want to go to John. John, tell us a little bit about your experience. And you mentioned in the chat before that you are much more interested in or specifically focused now on the endogenous DMT. So can you speak a little bit about what your experiences are with DMT in general or various psychedelics, as well as what you mean by exogenous? And also, where would you put something like DMT, for instance, since we're on the subject of DMT right now, where would you put it as far as spiritual trap versus something that actually has the potential and has helped tons of people for a very long time?
Well, my interest has always been about endogenous DMT. I think there's a time and place for the psychedelic discussion. You know, I've been at symposiums where there's been a lot of scientists talking about, I guess, utilizing DMT in order to, I guess, break through the materialist paradigm to give people direct experience with the divine. And I think that's just one perspective, to use an exogenous substance to induce an experience that can open somebody's eyes. But in terms of, I guess, historically and globally, the conversation around things like near-death experience, I think that's where the endogenous DMT discussion has become pretty pronounced over the past decade or so, being that people have completely transcendental mystical experiences at, I guess, moment of death or, you know, getting close to death. And, you know, the endogenous DMT has been speculated to be involved with that. A 2019 study at a University of Michigan in the animal showcased that there was a 600% increase in the visual cortex following cardiac arrest in terms of endogenous DMT. So there is some sort of data to suggest that DMT does modulate these near-death experiences. And in many cases, people that do have near-death experiences, they cite very similar sort of changes in their perspective of life. Similarly to people that have used exogenous DMT. So that's really my focus and my interest is understanding the biomechanics of this stuff, not necessarily just near-death experiences, because nevertheless, even though endogenous DMT might be playing a role in that experience, it's still subjective. In order to present that to the world as something real, I think we need to take it a step further and actually go in incremental pathways towards explaining the supernormal and the supernatural for the general public and mainstream science. So that's really where I'm coming from with all this.
Well, I hope that we get into that as well, but that I would put aside just for a second because this specific subject revolves around, I would say, more the kind of DMT and the kind of psychedelics that we get from these plant sources, from these chemical sources. And eventually I do want to talk about the kind of things that you can bring up from within, which I personally think is that much more significant. But as far as your experiences with the chemical types, what would you say as far as not just your experience, but in general, what are your thoughts on not just the safety of it in terms of one's, putting oneself in danger, but what is the spiritual potential and spiritual safety of taking something like the external chemicals and plants and whatnot?
I think for the most part, the safety profile is pretty well established. 80% of the people will have pretty, I guess, safe experiences. Like in terms of processing, there is a subset of people that do have really, I guess, traumatic experiences. Even in Rick Strassman's trial, the book DMT, the Spirit Molecule, Strassman touches upon one of the subjects who didn't have a good experience at all. He was actually raped by crocodiles for like 5 hours during his DMT experience. So, it's not like everything is all good. People can have traumatic experiences and it can give them PTSD. So I think that DMT is probably the most captivating because it is endogenous, and the fact that it can give somebody such a, I guess, a massive experience in only 10 minutes. You can go basically from having a cup of coffee with a friend to being interacting with beings in very short order and then coming right back and finishing that cup of coffee. So I think that's where the DMT conversation is very different than things like LSD or psilocybin. But for the most part, physiologically, it's very safe. You even have companies right now testing out exogenous DMT, subpsychedelic levels of exogenous DMT to address things like stroke, being that it is a very safe compound and has cellular protective aspects of it.
Can I just touch on one thing he said real quick? If you
Yeah.
don't mind? So you made a good point, because it's not like everyone that's going to try it is going to have an amazing, fun, great experience. There are a lot of instances where people have negative responses. And I want to right away. I thought of the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous out of all places. His name is Bill Wilson. He talked about using psychedelics as a way to find a spiritual awakening, which is the 12th step of AA. But he made it clear that he said that for someone to get to that point might take years and years of recovery and therapy and whatnot. It's that not everybody should just jump right towards the spiritual awakening on day one. It can be very detrimental, actually.
Well, that brings us to the ultimate question, which is what I was asking earlier, having to do with the spiritual ramifications of taking such a thing. And I think I'm going to go now to Owen Cyclops. Owen, I've heard your thoughts on psychedelics before, but let's have just like a basic layout of the potential dangers you see with them if we are talking specifically in the spiritual realm here.
Yeah, man, for sure. Really quick, so I guess in the beginning we were introducing ourselves. I kind of assume people know who I am, but just 10 seconds in case they don't. You can find me on Twitter, and I just released a book of comics. It's on Amazon. Search my name. I'm shilling my book, but that's basically it. Anyway, yeah, so it's interesting because it kind of puts me in like a little bit of a weird position, being the antagonist, I guess you could say. It's like I'm going out and I'm like,
last stream was legendary.
I'm
by
like the
way.
anti-weed guy. Like, don't smoke weed is like really not the vibe that I'm trying to give off.
It's all good.
But I think that for me, it kind of, well, my own journey, I did a lot of psychedelics, I'm sure everyone here has. I guess for me, it became interesting. And part of the reason why I'm very interested in it is because I see it breaking in the culture in this very particular way. I guess you could say going mainstream in the culture in a particular way. And I think that a lot of the time it's presented as, also just before I give this little anecdote, so I really hate when people kind of like project onto me and like assume my own views. So like, I don't know you guys that well. I'm sure you guys are cool guys. You know, I meet people at parties. If someone's into like LSD at a party, it's not like I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you why you're wrong. Like it's really not like that.
That's all right.
Maybe you should. It'd be better for them.
Oh, by the way, be a
well-
little bit closer to the mic, by the way. I noticed that your sound
Closer to
is
the
a
mic,
wee
yeah.
bit off.
Yeah. So for me, I guess there's one anecdote that I think really sums up my angle and how it fits into my worldview, which is that I went to this ceremony and I was talking with someone and she was telling me about this time that she took peyote and saw her brother talking to her in this fire, and her mom like talked to her brother in this fire. And that always really stuck with me. And I didn't really know why. And as I got more deep into my research about religion, worldviews, philosophy, theology, things like that, I think that that anecdote really stuck in my mind because it's often presented in the mainstream culture, or actually specifically within like the psychedelic world itself of people interested in them, as I'm just interested in this. I'm kind of like a neutral person. I'm doing psychedelics. I'm gathering this information and trying to figure it out, you know. But the thing is that to take meaningful spiritual information from the experience necessitates fitting it into a larger worldview. It's actually impossible to step into the experience neutrally unless you really are just doing it from a purely scientific perspective. And the peyote thing is perfect because what you think that apparition was makes the meaning of the experience. So if you're going to say, well, it actually was my dead brother in this fire talking to me, that spills back into your worldview. And now do you live in this world where like the dead are just kind of hanging around waiting to talk to us when we take drugs? Like maybe that's real. Or is it a hallucination? Was it 100% fake? And then that affects the meaning that you're taking from the experience? Is it kind of fuzz out into like the collective unconscious? So it's like maybe a little real, but not really. And that became very interesting for me because I was around all these people sort of in the world in a way. And I kind of realized that I was in the middle of this sort of grassroots folk religion. And that usually, again, I'm not saying you guys, but like usually in general, the whole psychedelic package in this time and place kind of comes as a little folk religion. It comes with its own mythology and this lineage that you see yourself as participating in. It has, you know, sort of like rites in a way and a cosmology that you partake of. So I guess part of my interest in it became, how does this fit into a larger worldview? And when I started trying to do that, things became a lot different. And I ultimately came out on the side of, this is not an entirely 100% benevolent thing, which I guess we probably maybe all agree on. But I also started to think it was hooked into some larger, weirder, darker things. And it became very difficult for me to systematize everyone's individual experiences while staying on the page of, this is a viable, tenable spiritual path for this culture and my spiritual development.
Where can you say the darkness lies for you? And I do want to get Gnostic Informant and DMT Quest to reply to this. But in general, what would you say would be, other than maybe certain confusion as far as what's going to be, you know, around the corner in the afterlife, or how the spirit world works? What would you say is the potential, like, really dark outcome that you may be concerned about here?
Well, there is a term that they have in Eastern Christian theology that we don't really have here. I think I mentioned this last time on the stream when we talked about it. Yeah, called prelest.
Spiritual
which
delusion.
is basically spiritual delusion. And I think one thing is that, at least for me personally, when I was in the world of, you know, going to ayahuasca ceremonies and things like that, the idea of being skeptical of these beings or entities, or maybe thinking that you're being deceived in some way, or hooking it into a larger cohesive framework where there are malevolent and benevolent entities and what the ramifications of that are, it gets pretty dicey pretty quickly. I mean, for example, like you just mentioned, this guy getting raped by like alligators for like 5 hours. I mean, not that that like is the definitive experience, but integrating that into a whole gets very complicated. To make it not abstract, I'll give like a tangible thing to grab onto. Like, let's say this actually happened. So let's say I go to this ayahuasca ceremony and a woman's like, yeah, I took ayahuasca and I saw Ganesh, and Ganesh came to me and, you know, XYZ. Okay, next person. I took ayahuasca and I saw the Virgin Mary, and Virgin Mary came to me and told me X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, the thing is that integrating those two things is like almost impossible, because the spiritual system that Virgin Mary is from doesn't go with the spiritual system that Ganesh is from. So already you're like, so is this like an illusion then? Are we all like tapping into this illusion, or what's going on? And that was really the ... that led me on my path, you could say.
All right, who wants to go first? Gnostic or
Let me
okay?
jump in real quick.
All right.
Oh,
I agree with a lot what you said, but I think you actually almost answered your concern before you even got to it, because you were talking about how each individual sort of has an experience based on who they are, and they're going to interpret, oh, did I see my brother, as if, and then they're assuming that's their brother, and now they're going to assume X, Y, and Z, right? Well, the same thing would happen in a Christian sense, in a worldview. If you grow up Christian or whatever, I don't know where you're from, or you grow up Hindu or so, that's going to affect what happens with these trips. And DMT Quest made a good point. He's talking about a lot of this that we're getting at is all subjective experiences based on something that we can't have. We don't have any tangible something. He's looking to make steps towards being able to promote this on a true, like a true factual based, I guess that would make, if that makes sense, on what this actually is. So basically what I'm saying is, first of all, when one person sees Ganesh, another person sees Mary, it's not about trying to say is that the same thing and we're trying to connect the two together. What we're really doing is, what is the psychology of the person and actually having this experience? That's what we should focus on, not trying to pull all this out and connect it all together into one worldview, because we have to assume, is Christianity the true worldview, or is Hinduism the true worldview, or is, and as far as I'm concerned, you can't do that. We can't. And
Well, that would be my question though. Why should we focus on that rather than focus on what is, like, why should we focus on that?
because, well, I think the most important thing here is that we're taking a substance, that we're ingesting a substance. This is what's causing this. This isn't just like magic. This isn't just like God is literally coming down and doing this.
some people believe that actually.
I know they do, and that's the subjective thing. So, that's what I was getting at. What DM Quest was talking about. We're trying to get to the real. What is this? What's really happening in our minds? Is this like the psychology behind it? I think is what's affecting how we interpret it. What causes bad trips? All that stuff that I'm not qualified to talk about, but as I think that we should be focusing on to try to make this thing more usable, more accessible, I guess you'd say. So that's all I got.
Oh, and then a response, and I want to go to DMT Quest as well.
Yeah, your audio's cutting out a little bit, slowing down. But I guess from my perspective, I was gonna mention that it's not even just psychedelics that can cause, I guess, a shift in worldview and kind of leave somebody like not really understanding what they see or how they feel about the world. I mean, things like alien abductions and near-death experiences, and even meditative states where people tap into interacting with deceased loved ones. All this stuff can really change a person's worldview and leave somebody very disorientated. So it's like, it's not just for me, it's all altered states, whether it be psychedelics or something induced from other manners. You know, we can all be disoriented, and that's part of the growth process, though, right? Is having these weird experiences, however you have them, and then they force you to think about the world in a different way. Exactly. And it's not just a psychedelic thing; it's a life thing, and it doesn't even have to be mystical per se, but for whatever reason, the mystical experiences seem to induce these big questions and a reframing of the mental framework of how the world works. Does that make sense?
Well, sure, but when we decide whether something is a net positive or net negative, it's like one of those, what do you call it, those tests where they would have a couple of grains of sand and then they would have a pile of sand. And the question is, at what point is a couple of grains become a pile? At what point do certain problems that Owen Cyclops is bringing up become so much of a problem then it is something for people to address, not just saying that, oh, it's going to happen sometimes, it's fine, but actually saying, like, no, this is such a big deal, we got to do something to stop it. So, Owen, I don't know if you would be drastic as far as saying, we need to stop it, but what would you say are the dangers the DMT Quest and Gnostic Informant are not quite addressing here, that regardless of how it's looked at or analyzed, this is something that is going to happen to enough people, so it's not grains of sand, but it is a pile of sand, that it's going to create some problems down the line?
Well, I wouldn't phrase it that way because I don't want to be intentionally antagonistic. But I think that I think the difference in worldview is kind of partially what's interesting. Like, it's very possible to just like kind of smash the rocks together of like, is this good or is this bad, and like nothing really happens. But I think the differences of worldview is interesting because like the way that you guys are talking about it is not exactly the way that I see it, because the question of, for example, is Ganesh real? That has an answer. The answer is yes, and then there's an explanation, or the answer is no, and there's an explanation. The spiritual world isn't just like fuzz of like grayness. There are things that are true and things that are false. So the way that you're talking about it is kind of like, well, it's like reorienting or changing your perspective, but the thing is that at the end of the day, there are things that are true and false about reality. That incorporates the spiritual. And once you recognize that, integrating these experiences with that becomes very difficult.
I guess my question is, who dictates that? Who dictates whether something is 100% real or not real?
No one. Reality is reality regardless of what anyone thinks.
Yeah, I guess I understand that, but from a subjective perspective, I mean, like, I don't know the name of the god that you just stated. The person
Ganesh.
saw under Ganesh.
The reality is too good to be true. That's what Boji.
So is that real or is that fake, Ganesh?
I don't know. I have my suspicions, but
What's your suspicion?
Well, I will answer, but what I think isn't so my answer isn't what creates reality. If I said, yeah, 100%, Ganesh is 100% real, and he's not, that wouldn't change anything.
But the same
So
thing.
my,
but
my
the same
point,
thing.
so my point is more that,
Mhm.
so like the point is that I feel like, just to be totally clear, it's not like who gets to dictate what reality is. That question in and of itself points to the difference, because the reality still exists no matter what. If God is real and every person on earth thinks he's not, he's still real. If God's not real and everyone's religious, then it's still a lie. So like in the spiritual realm, there still are things that are true and false, just like us talking right now, just like you're sitting at a desk, I'm sitting at a desk.
I think I get your gist of what you're getting at, and here's what I would say to that. So I wouldn't go to like a devout Shia Muslim and tell him that he needs DMT to get to Allah. This is like I don't want to say that this isn't something that you push on other people as a solution to their problems. This is something that people seek out for themselves. This is all inner stuff. This is all the self. This is all the deep psyche. This isn't something that I would want to give to, hey, Christianity, this will help you out. Hey, you Hindus over there, you should try this. This to me is a different alternative to a, let's say, Christian worldview path. If you're a Christian, I can totally understand why you would think this is probably some gateway to Satan or something. I understand that. That's your worldview based on your life experiences. You have every right to believe that. However, at the end of the day, there's also people who benefit from taking these substances, who have spiritual awakenings that change their lives forever, and they go on to do great things and have families, and life is good after that. Like, but I have to be honest. Not everyone has that. Some people have really bad trips. They go crazy. They might jump off a building. That could happen too. So I think it's good that people like myself, we don't just try to shove it down people's throats and tell them this is the solution, because it's not. But I also I want to recognize that I know what you're getting at, and I think you're right. From certain worldviews, this is probably not the go-to thing.
But in terms of, again, that weird-ass SAC equation that I talked about, or would you say that the problems that you see Gnostic Informant are for you more like the grains of sand, as opposed to just being this giant sack of sand, in terms of the things that people have to deal with. For example, we could say that drinking alcohol, you would discourage in general drinking, consumption of alcohol to a certain extent where it just gets erratic, doing cocaine, doing heroin. Like, we could objectively say that this becomes so much of a problem, even though some people can handle it really well, right?
You know what else we could objectively say? We could objectively say that those drugs that you just mentioned are more harmful than DMT.
Well, that's the interesting
I don't know
part
about
then.
cocaine, though. I mean, cocaine's built empires.
Yes. No, but I think this is the interesting part here. So, Owen, I know that you're not trying to put yourself even in the position of saying that you completely object to the use of psychedelics, but I really want to detail, like, what exactly are the potentially horrible ramifications where it is going to be enough people that are going to be experiencing this that you could, have this position of not advocating for it. Like, if somebody were to ask you, hey, Owen, should I try some DMT? Should I try some ayahuasca? Then you'd kind of be like, hey, slow down, buddy. Here's why. Like, why that position specifically?
Like, when people ask me if they should do it or not, why I would say no. Yeah, I do say no. Yeah. I think that for most people, to be totally honest, I think most people, I don't think anyone here fits into this category, honestly, but I think for most people, they've never really poked around in the world of a worldview and a philosophical understanding of things and what's true and what's false in terms of building a larger worldview. So I've seen people all the time who take it and then assume that the information that they received on the substance is true, or it kind of warps things in a certain way. And I think for most people, opening up the hood of your car and really poking around in there gets really crazy really fast. And, I guess that makes me sound pretentious, because then it's like, well, are you in column A and you can, like, quote unquote handle it, or column B and you can't? But I think that as it breaks in the culture and becomes normalized, and like Vice News and BuzzFeed are like, do ayahuasca, I think, being realistic, even if I was pro the substances, you're going to catch a lot of people in the net who are going to unhinge themselves from reality.
I don't disagree at all. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, so
it shouldn't just be given out like, "Hey, try this." Like, I would say the same thing. I would say
Timothy Leary, let's put it in the water, sort of.
Right? No, I agree with you. This is not just something that everyone should just go do, because this is serious. Like you said, mental health is a big deal, and we're, like you said, we're exploring our minds by taking this substance. And I do want to address one more thing you said about, is this real or is this not? The information that I get, was that real or not? I mean, that's like saying, if you had a weird dream or a nightmare, is that like saying, should I listen to that nightmare, or should I listen to that? Because really, it is like a dream in a way. It's more or less not that you're trying to take the information and do something with it. It's more or less, is this experience helping me in any way? And if it's not, maybe I shouldn't do it. If it's hurting me, maybe I shouldn't do it. But my focus is on those people that it does help. That's what I want to focus on, because it does have some really good positive net things for certain people, especially not even just DMT, like psilocybin mushrooms and
well, this could be the point of the conversation where I can go back in time to the conversation we were having with Owen Cyclops and Daniel Pinchbeck. By the way, thank you so much, John, for kind of nudging Daniel to do that stream, and it was a very interesting stream, to say the least. But what was the question, Owen, that you were giving to Daniel, so that now John and the Gnostic Informant could kind of be in his place? Yes. What was the question that really made him, get a little bit agitated? Do you recall? Like, what was the thing? What was the thing?
That was the no ropes barbed wire match of a stream.
I think that, trying to figure out how to phrase this to not make myself sound like a dick, to be totally honest with you. I think that when we start getting involved in other people, I mean, again, I'm not going to say this every single time I say anything. I'm not saying you guys are doing this, but right. I think that in general, when we start getting involved in other people's spiritual lives, or we even start taking the reins in our own spiritual lives, what you start to use as criteria, and when you start doing that, it gets very complicated, because the thing is, for most people that I encounter in the psychedelic world, at least when I was more in it, it's kind of like what you just said, where it's like, well, yeah, X, Y, and Z, like maybe this person saw this, you didn't just say this, maybe this person saw this God and they weren't real, or maybe they started getting into New Age and they think some weird stuff about crystals and that's not real, whatever. But they stopped drinking and they stopped smoking and they really got their life together, man. So, I mean, how can you say that's a bad thing? Like I see all these improvements in this person's life. The thing is, though, and this is what we talked about the last stream that time, that's kind of what every religion or spirituality has. When you talk to Mormons, that's like the first thing they'll tell you. And if Mormons come to your house and you give them like a hard argument, that's what they'll fall back on. They'll say, well, look, you're telling me all this stuff about Joseph Smith, but I've seen the good things that this has done for my life and my family. And my uncle used to be an alcoholic and my dad used to beat my mom. And then we got into Mormonism and now you wouldn't even believe how different it is, dude. So how can you say that this isn't right what I'm doing? But those things aren't conditional on whether or not, no one here would accept that as a positive argument for the Book of Mormon or something, or for Mormonism being like a positive spiritual path that we should be promoting.
You can say that about any religion. You can say that about whatever your religion is, or Christianity.
Yes, I would not present that as argument for a religion for that exact reason.
Yeah, that's utilitarian. Well, I have a longer point, but maybe if John wants to go.
What was the question, though? Because I just
Well,
wanted to...
before John, I wanted to also find out from Owen.
So there's
there
major
was a specific...
censorship going on in this stream.
No, Gio,
John is pointing out.
you're gonna go on the soapbox just in a bit. But before that, first of all, everybody subscribe. Patreon.com/breaktherules.
Remember Trump used to do presidential harassment?
All right, but before that, just to continue this thing with
wait, can I say one other thing really quick? Sorry, wait.
Sure.
One other thing, just as long as I'm kind of wrapping up my
Yes.
this is like I don't want to say case, but one other thing though is that appealing to the subjective nature of it, and it's a personal thing, becomes very complicated when people have shared psychedelic experiences. Like in the story that I just told, the mom and the daughter both saw the brother in the fire. So to step backwards and say, well, it's just happening in you and in yourself, I mean, that becomes, now you're talking about like an astronomical coincidence or something because two people saw the same thing. So anyway, that's kind of my little loop of weird cases tied together.
And I could lead that into something else later on when it comes to certain spiritual decisions having to do with willpower. But before that, and before the Geo soapbox, which is coming very soon, I want to ask one final question, Owen, regarding the Daniel Pinchbeck conversation, which is there were some studies that were mentioned, and I believe this is what he got really angry about when you were picking certain things that were going on in these studies where people reported, having these experiences and then they came back. Well, do you recall, and if not, we can skip it, but do you recall what specifically we're talking about in relation to those studies?
Yeah, so leading off, it is not that I reject all studies or the medical data in toto. I know, John, you were saying that you're probably looking at some pretty cool stuff, honestly. It sounds pretty cool. So
His books are amazing.
So it's not like I'm like, oh, the science is fake or something like that. Specifically, what we were talking about was
a little bit louder.
Specifically what we were talking about.
Science is fake, Owen. That's the problem.
Obviously. Specifically what we were talking about was that there are some studies that are, I guess I could say, purely psychological and not rooted more in the hard science of biomechanisms and things like that, where basically, I'm thinking of a study from Johns Hopkins, but I didn't pull it up or anything. But there are a lot of studies like this where they'll take someone and say, you did ayahuasca. Is your life better now? Are you happier? X, Y, and Z. And they'll sort of just see how it improved people's life and purport to turn it into quantitative data. And as someone coming at it from a spiritual perspective, that is the kind of thing that I actually do reject across the board, honestly, because I think it's very naive to think that someone can assess their own life while they're in it and what is causing X and what's causing Y. And something like even a person's own happiness is a very subjective, weird thing. If you took my parents, for example, and you ask them, when are you the happiest? They might say, when we're all watching TV together. But no one would ever present that as data to show that television makes you happier. And now we know that television makes you happier.
Relative,
data about it.
Isn't it relative, though? Like the Mormon, for example. The Mormon, he finds a family. He improves his life through this religion. We all look at that like Mormon's dumb. But for him, it improves his life. that I'm not going to tell him to stop being a Mormon because I think it's dumb. If it's improving his life, then he should be Mormon. If DMT is helping somebody, I don't know, find their purpose in life, and for someone else they think they met the devil, those experiences are relative to that person.
There is also a monthly thing though, and I want to ask John Chavez this again. Don't worry, Gio, we are going to get to you very, very, very soon. I want to quickly just ask John Chavez about this as well, but also ask in general, when these studies are done, how far in advance do they take a look at the people's progress? Because psychedelics, they're still in the system for months afterwards, and that affects a person a certain way. And then the question is not even just like 1 year afterwards, but what about like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years afterwards? What exactly is going to happen to these people? I've met plenty of these Burning Man people that have burned out, to borrow the same phrase, and they've done plenty of psychedelics in their own time. And I think that there's a lot of, danger that they ended up incurring upon themselves, through burning themselves out, through just like going down the stripey hole time and time again. But DMT Quest, what say you specifically related to the study thing that Owen was bringing up? And then I swear to God, I'm going to go to Geo. Everybody subscribe.
Hashtag Geo harassment.
Well, I think, it depends on the study that we're looking at, right? If somebody is like an alcoholic and they get a very clean cut, I guess, sort of effect from ayahuasca in which, they don't need to imbibe in alcohol anymore. That's a pretty straightforward sort of situation. I think what Cyclops was talking about was kind of like the more questionnaire aspects of studies that don't really look at brain imaging. They kind of just, they're just questionnaires. And those are a little bit harder they're not really, like he said, it's not so much as a tangible hard science. It's more of like a subjective thing. But I think that's a good point that you brought up, Lev, is like people that are burners, and then you see them where they just can't get away from just imbibing in these substances, and it's almost like there's progression and then there's digression, and there's not really any path that they're on. It's chronic exploration just to explore rather than to build something. At least that's what it seems outwardly in some cases. So I think frequency of usage is very important. Dosage is very important. It's not just like a one cut thing, right? Like we're just talking about psychedelics in one framework. There's like nuances and all these things. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective.
Geo, it's your time to shine.
All right. Hashtag Geo harassment. I think I wanted to talk about, I guess, to bracket the actual experience itself, because it's like every time we have one of these streams, it seems that we're getting caught up in the utilitarian approach of does it benefit people and is it valid and blah, blah, blah. I think that to look at the gestalt of like how psychedelics has been sort of in the last, I would say 20 to 15 years has been sort of streamlined within Western society, how a lot of, I would say, nefarious people are sort of using it as a form of like, what would you call it? Like industrial level self-help therapy or something. Like how a bunch of Silicon Valley nerds are, bombing DMT and then like going on some weird like transhuman and post-human sort of like train of thought. Like to me, these things are not neutral in the sense, like the pre-last idea is quite interesting, because if you say that a substance can allow a certain form of like spiritual delusion, then it's not necessarily something that in terms of like a Pandora's box you want to like really go down, because like there's a lot of people who like the microdosing thing is fascinating because there's this one chapter in the Psychopolitics book by Byung-Chul Han where he talks about emotional capitalism, and he talks about how the sort of like self-help industrial complex is such a big deal nowadays because it's a way in which you can come to terms with the fact that you're like a cog in like the global homogenous like neoliberal machine, and the sort of mass like ennui and like displacement and rootlessness that we see in Western civilization. It seems that like the older attitude of drugs that make you productive or sort of that's gone out the wayside. Now it's sort of drugs that can give you a self-insight, but when it comes to actual like real world comportment, and behavior. It's not going to transcend anything beyond like having an insight into your own self. Because like I remember this, and I shouldn't pick on him, and I know it's kind of bad form, but like there was that one clip where Daniel Pinchbeck was with his friend Russell Brand, and he's like, "What if we give all the world leaders DMT?" And everyone was clapping, of course, you know. But I'm like, the truth is that a lot of world leaders have done DMT, and a lot of them are ghouls, and a lot of them are terrible, and a lot of them think that, I hate to say it, but Alex Jones was right, that a lot of them think they contact demons through these experiences. But I think that
is he right? Is Alex Jones right about that though? Like
I think he's right.
Where do we have data for that though? I mean, it sounds kind of
well, because there's always been mystery cults throughout human history, right? And it's like if we're not immune to that sort of reality. And so I think the problem is when we reify the psychedelic experience outside of their original cultural context and sort of shamanic origins into something, when you bring that into a higher civilization that was built ostensibly on the back of Christianity, then it's like there's a lot of cross wiring going on that I think we're not accounting for. And then you get to the forces of emotional capitalism and psychopolitics. Now you have something that promises liberation as another form of control in like a weird inverted way, which is like, I think that's the problem. That's probably the biggest danger. As for like the subjective experience, I mean, a lot of people say that, I don't know, like being a furry or BDSM is providing them some kind of like, and by the way, Lev, please get rid of messy tails. Please, we gotta lock this down. Get rid of that right now. I do
it's not
wanna
just
look at
messy tails though. It's my fertile textile. Get a Texas in Texas as in howdy, y'all.
I don't think of fertility. When I think of messy tails, I don't think of fertility in life. I think of death. Okay, that is death worship. So, anyways, yeah, that's my point. I think that's my
messy
little
tails
spiel.
is the new Shiva destruction.
Oh,
but no, Gio, I understand your point, but it is interesting for me to focus on what exactly is the braised grounding here that a lot of people, especially in the chat, are leaning towards. And I think it does have to do with there being a certain amount of order. Because you could say that a lot of the modern religions, they all stem from mystery cults themselves. Within the mystery cults, there were orders. Within these organized religions, there are orders. Even, I guess you could say that within a hippie commune, you'd usually have, like, the alpha, some Father Yod figure who would be, like the, the main guy to dish out all the rules. So I'd see a lot of order in various things with hierarchy. But when I look at just, like, these various Burning Man people, these various freewheeling types, just doing whatever they want without any order in place.
Elite, according to Moldbug, they're the elite.
Yeah, but if there is no order,
well,
then
the Burning Man people, they're on the cusp, they're the cutting edge.
But at the same time, Gio, I would not dish out that same order to somebody like think of like I don't know, Egon Schiele, or think of his predecessor, what's his name, his mentor?
Gustav Klimt.
Gustav Klimt, exactly. I wouldn't put those people in the category of people who needed to subscribe to this very regimented setting. There are some, like Alexander Bart always talks about, you're going to have a class of people who are the shamans, who are the artist class. But as far as the rest of them, I don't think a lot of those people who go to Burning Man are of that characteristic. So I'm curious, like, what do you guys think of Gio's point in relation to the need to have more order established in a lot of these various things, including psychedelic usage?
If I could comment like briefly on Egon Schiele, like, I mean, that when you like go to the absolute possible limits of human eroticism, like he did in his artwork, I mean, that I wouldn't prescribe that to anybody, let alone even Egon Schiele. I mean, to the point where his artwork literally destroyed him, the way that it, like, you know what I mean? If you
okay, fine, that's a bad example, but there are other artists out there who are not Egon Schiele who nevertheless were able to.
That's a perfect example of someone whose artwork has. That's why they censor him now, because he exposes that form of eroticism that is on the absolute darkest fringes. And so that's why, he gets canceled so much nowadays, saying like he can't show his work because it's not sex posy or whatever, right? Like that's. But in order to go to those depths, you have to like do some very despicable and disgusting things, which he admitted he did in his lifetime, and it ultimately killed him. I mean, so yeah, maybe that is a bad.
Yeah, no, but if that is the nadir or however
what do
you
you
phrase
think
that,
about Egon Schiele?
yeah.
What do I think about him? It's not related to psychedelics, but probably a lot of things we talk about aren't. He's cool. You're actually blowing my mind because I never thought about Klimt and him knowing each other, but I don't want to go too off into the forest. I mean, I could, but
Yeah.
Klimt was a strange hound as well. He used to bang aristocrat women all the time.
So
He
for
cut half the lords in Europe.
So for the last conversation that we had about, well, artists, they can't be salesmen. What is a bigger example of salesmanship than shagging a, well-off to-do lady?
Can I just ask a question based on what I want to ask Gio a question about what he said, and I just want to understand you a little better. You're saying that the problem lies in, like, look, we have elitists who are bad people, and because some of them do DMT, therefore it's probably bad for society as a whole. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that, it's sort of more of an anthropological question of, is it our right to take these things out of their contexts within these shamanic tribes and sort of mass produce them, or rather give the experience into like a touristy sort of mass production and sort of use these substances to such a degree where they become just another sort of self-help device, which is like a lot of like most research into psychedelia isn't really from, it used to be in the 70s, it was mostly religious and anthropological studying, but now that like the sort of Silicon Valley people have gave money to it, and a lot of like biomedical industrial complex people are looking into it, I fear for the future of what psychedelics are going to produce in terms of like, I don't know, we're going to live in some island, Brave New Worlds, what is the drug called? Soma, but there was another drug in Island. Yeah, well, yeah, but like in the way that in Brave New World, there was another drug, they called it.
I think it was called Soma.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that
those...
sort of idea of like psychopharmacology.
Well, that's the point of actually studying this and having it. Like this goes back to the DMT's opening statement, DMT Quest's opening statement, when he was talking about, let's get out of this subjective. Let's get out of the like you said, should we take them out of their context from the mystery cults, and let's actually figure out why it's doing what it's doing, and if we can use that as a tool, get to the actual truth, the objective truth of what this stuff is. And as far as the other, I mean, like I said this before, I'll say it again. Everybody has everyone has a different worldview, so it is relative. Like I have to make that very clear. I'm not saying that this should be embraced by the whole world. I'm saying if there's something to this thing, it should be explored and tested out and tried out. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we should give it to kids in school and stuff like that and have everyone try it. Like that's not. I hope that's clear by now.
You know there are people I think who are strong enough to. But I wanted to go back.
Well,
to
also Owen, I think Owen wanted to reply to that.
Yeah. One thing really quick. So it's like tangentially related. I'm sure like a lot of things will be like tangentially related. But it is a really, really, really interesting philosophical question that has kind of been like under the surface this whole time. Where, so I don't know if should I call you Gnostic Informant? Is that what you go by?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you said if someone's Mormon and it makes them happy, they should be Mormon, right? It's a really interesting question that I think anyone involved with spirituality has to answer, because that's just a good example. I've been kind of picking on the Mormons, but I actually like them a lot. But either that
shout
really
out to
happened,
our good friend
Tux loves you, and Tux loves you.
Well, it's a good example because either that really happened and the Mormon Church is true, or the Mormon Church is wrong and it's all a lie. So the question is, though, is it better for someone to believe a lie if it makes their life better in every way?
It's not that it's better. It's that for that one person in particular, it seems to be improving. Like, because then you have to ask that question for every single spiritual path on the planet, and
even non-spiritual paths, right?
Yeah, exactly. Philosophy in general, you have to ask that for everything, and which we already are doing. So then it becomes who's right, who has the objective truth, reality. I mean, that's what philosophy is. That's the whole point of philosophy. No one has that answer. You can't point to a religion and say, this is proven true, and I can demonstrate this right now. You can't do that. So
Well, I don't know about that.
as far you
I
can't, as far as I know, you can't. The Mormons are just as wrong or right as a regular Christian or a Jew.
But there is another thing I could throw in here. So even though we don't know exactly what is right, we could say that there are certain trends in religions where, let's say, I don't know, doing unto others as you would have done unto you, something that, not every religion shares, but it's out there. Certain things that we can recognize
think we
are
know
an
and
objective
share that.
good,
That's-
and they're in various religions, and as long as people do those things, like I was telling Gio the last stream that we had, the later part of it, I don't personally care, and I know this is very controversial in these circles, I don't really care whether Jesus was a living being or not. What I care about is whether the after effects of there being this idea of Jesus cause people to act in such a way that makes them actually, go higher up in the hierarchy of spiritual awareness.
Which brings you back to the Mormon. I mean, he's not, and you can't demonstrate. He can't demonstrate his religion to be true any more than someone can demonstrate that Jesus resurrected. It's just a fact.
But that doesn't actually change anything. That there is an actual objective reality that exists. It doesn't matter. If I say I'm God and a bunch of people start following me in a little cult, I could just say to you, well, you can't prove that I'm not God, but I'm not. I still wouldn't be. There still is an objective reality that exists beyond that then has ramifications. And it's just an interesting philosophical question of, well, if I did that, let's just say I did that and I had a bunch of people following me, if all their lives were improved.
Would they follow you though? Because then you could say anything. You can use any example, but exactly.
So we have to be oriented towards what is true. We have to be oriented, like you just said, that's the whole point of philosophy. We have to be oriented towards, and even if we can't point to one thing and say, this is true, it still is a guiding principle that precludes us from saying, well, you're believing something that might be a lie, but it improved your life, so it's kind of a wash. And for me, that's where it gets really interesting, because when you're in the spaces and someone's like, I came to this conclusion that I'm kind of like a god. I'm not God, I'm not crazy, but I'm like a fallen divinity, and this world is an illusion. The world is an illusion around me, so I don't get upset about anything anymore because this world isn't even real, man.
But the world
matters if that's true or not.
Exactly, and the world will respond to that. His surroundings will tell that person if he's really God. People will believe him or they won't. And to be clear, they won't. There might be some people following him, but look at take the crazy Scientology, for example. What's going on with Scientology? Is it growing or is it shrinking? It's actually shrinking. Really, it's actually on its way out because
people, thank God.
And to Christianity's strength, it's stuck along. It's staying around. It's doing what it's been doing because of what Lev was saying. Because it has principles that people like. People enjoy it. It fulfills their lives. That's why it's always going to be there. But as far as demonstrating objectively, like you said, there is an objective truth. Yes, but we don't know for sure what that is yet. We're not there yet.
No, I would add a caveat to that, though.
Because Christianity is just true, and that's why people gravitate towards it.
No, I would add one... Hold on. I want to add one caveat. Gio, I want to add one quick caveat to what I was talking about earlier, which is I disagree with Gnostic in that I don't think it's just a matter... Oh, real quick, I'll be done. I don't think it's a... Don't worry, Gio, I'm not suppressing you. I said something first, driver's right of way. Anyway, when Gnostic was mentioning this, I don't think it is purely for the satisfaction of the individual person. I really do think that by doing something that is, whether we know it or not, an objective good, then that person gets closer to God, that they get closer to the state of understanding what all of this is about through the process of, at the very least, adopting something that is good. So it's not just for their own benefit. I see this as being something that would aid in the transformation of people to a higher state. That's all I want to say.
But I think that there are objective measures of what people... Okay, a lot of people were saying we don't know what constitutes success or happiness. I think we do. We sort of have a very meta level of what is eudaimonia, what leads to flourishing in life. I think those are pretty much as much as I'm a postmodernist, but I do think that there are certain truths to existence that do bear out in terms of what produces, human flourishing. Not happiness in the sense of what is contentment in life, because for example, you have the quote unquote happiest countries in the world in Scandinavia that have the highest anhero rates. I can't say the word on YouTube. I want to avoid saying the word. But you know anhero, right?
Yes.
So Japan is another example. Although I would say Japan is more of complex and complicated society when it comes to their level of happiness and so forth. But I wanted to get to what DMT Quest, what John, you were saying about endogenous versus exogenous. I think that is probably a less debated upon thing in a lot of like psychedelic communities, because a lot of it's predicated on DMT and the strongest thing. But when you talk about other spiritual practices that can induce different spiritual states, I mean, that I think that's probably gets lost in translation, because unfortunately a lot of people, from my experience in like these new age groups, a lot of them, they sort of took the McKenna thing to heart, where they're like, well, if you have the key to all existence, then why would you take anything else? So I think like that's probably a good discussion. So maybe go over some of your research in this field.
Well, so DMT is, I guess, really important in terms of a communicative. It kind of offers a communicative bridge of sorts for hardcore engineer materialists, and then you have the spiritual realms over here, and then you have the psychedelic people over here, and it's like a point of convergence in terms of conversation, because I think most people have had a mystical experience, at least one that really had them questioning, like, was that real? And I feel like I did experience that, but I really don't know the framework with which to put that in. So I think that's where the endogenous DMT conversation offers most of its, power. In terms of like the biomechanics of like altered states of consciousness and things like that, DMT isn't anything new. Altered states have been around forever. We're just trying to better, place DMT within the states of, these altered states that induce spiritual experiences. To be quite honest, I think it's this specific era of human history. We're going to be rewriting spirituality as a whole. We're all going to be trying to figure out like the big picture framework of how does this religion tie in with this religion, with this alien stuff, with this near-death experience stuff, and we're going to be putting together a much more comprehensive picture than any one religion. And that's really where my interest is, not just in supernormal abilities and maybe reverse engineering some of the things that, have been written about in the mystical texts and Christianity and things like that, but also, building a bigger, more comprehensive framework of reality that I think it's overdue. I think religion is great. It has its purpose in terms of creating structure for people, and I think structure helps alleviate anxiety for a lot of people. So I think that's one of the basic foundations of the benefits of religion. But I think going forward, we have a lot of interesting explorers that either they use psychedelics or altered states of consciousness, or they had a near-death experience, and they all want to contribute to the future framework of the complexity of reality.
Well, this would be a good time to bring up Seraphim Rose and his book Religion of the Future, which I know you're very familiar with, Owen. I think you're very familiar with it. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but let me know, like, what would be your retort to what DMT Quest was talking about as far as this ability to discover things with the various religions that's going on today and may go on in the future, to the extent that he was talking about.
Well, it kind of comes back to what I was saying before, where it literally exactly what you just described is New Age. That's literally what New Age is. You just gave a perfect description of it. So it kind of comes back to what I was saying, where often the view presents as worldview neutral, but in reality, in my mind, it's just like I'm talking to someone who is part of a religion. That's not a bad thing, but I don't see it as worldview neutral. I mean, what you just said, literally, not that it makes it wrong, but you could just tear it right out of like the Wikipedia article on what New Age is, because that's exactly the view, that we're about to step into this new time period where we can finally kind of merge the religions together in a way. I know it's not exactly what you said, but now I'm kind of like going off. And so for me, I think it's just really important to realize that it's not an objective view. It's a view that is hooked into a larger cohesive system. And I think that for me, it falls apart because I think that something that most people don't know, honestly, is that the religions make mutually exclusive claims that are not able to be stacked on top of one another. The world religions are mutually exclusive 90+% of the time, in a way that makes it so that stacking them over each other basically just boils down to like be a good person, but then even what that means and how that fits into a larger framework is different. So that
I
was
was
Yeah,
saying to like,
I guess-
for example,
it's basically a presupposition. It's a presupposition that it's new age. It's basically like the new age presupposition that I disagree with.
I'm not sure if that's
Yeah,
what
it's
DMT
like-
Quest was talking about, but go on.
Well,
Yes.
New Age is not
Yeah.
new either. People got to remember that New Age is we call it New Age now, but what is actually taking place in these New Age circles has been going on for thousands of years. There's always been people who try to mix religions together, especially when after the time of Alexander the Great, the Hellenized world, everybody was mixing religion to Ammon, became equivalent to Zeus. This has all been happening for thousands of years. We just call it New Age now. The reason why it appeals to a lot of people is because they see that as more freedom than a religion that has a textbook, that has a dogmatic, has doctrines and this. People get turned off by that because they want their freedom, which is that's why New Age does what it does. But it does.
But kids get turned off from wanting to clean their room. Kids get turned off from wanting to eat broccoli.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right in the fact that you are just doing what you want with it. It's like you're just like, this is my religion. Like here it is.
But I don't think this is what DMT Quest was talking about, though. Unless I'm mistaken, you were talking about more of the analysis of a lot of these past religions to such an extent that we never got a chance to do so before. I want to make sure, DMT Quest, do I understand you correctly?
It's not about stacking them on to each other. It's the obvious fact that a lot of them they don't resonate with the youth. They don't resonate with people of a certain educational background for whatever reason, you know. And what I'm getting at is that they're just not comprehensive enough. I don't know if religions really integrate the whole UFO thing that we're obviously going to be stepping into probably in the next year on a mainstream perspective. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to need like a much more comprehensive view of how the world works. And I don't even know what New Age is. I'm not a New Ager. This is the first time I've heard that what I'm speaking about is New Age, but
that's why I said people call it New Age. It's not really new. It's just a word. It's just a word we use to describe things that are heretical to certain religions or whatever. And
I don't know. I think if you were to integrate most sort of trends in religion or lessons, barring like polytheism, I think that Christianity is pretty much like apostolic Christianity is pretty much a good middle position within a lot of different trends of faith, both in the ancient world and in modernity. I think like that's why it's been able to be so successful, quote unquote.
But are we talking about integration though, Gio? Like, are we talking about integration, or are we talking about being able to have a much clearer view of what exactly is going on, what is actually going on in existence itself? That's different from piling all the religions on top of each other.
The problem is when you look at religion, like, I don't know, I mean, some update that it's like a booster stat to like your understanding of the world. I mean, that's the kind of defeating the point. That's like
no, but if we go, let's say from the point of view of being more animal-like, you know, being an animal that relies on instincts to being a human being that is self-aware of themselves. I don't think it stops there. I think that there are other paths that people could go on, and I'm not one of those people who believes it's all like this linear trajectory upwards. I think most are actually going to go the other way. Most are going to turn into animals. But those that don't turn into animals, there is a small chance, that maybe there is going to be some other level of understanding using some other senses that we're not developing right now. That's more what I mean. But I don't know, DMT Quest, would you describe it as being that, like the heightening of certain senses that may have been lost over time, that maybe we had those senses but we didn't have self-awareness and now we can merge the two together? Like, how would you describe it? Because it does seem like a lot of these things are being brought up as far as the sixth sense goes.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I think that that's one of the reasons why the materialists and the scientists and the engineers kind of discount religion as not being worthwhile in terms of exploring, because a lot of religions seem to incorporate stories of people having supernormal abilities. And obviously on a mainstream level, you know, the way that it's presented, it doesn't seem like that's even possible based on the way that mainstream science has presented the human body. And that's where I'm really interested in, is maybe reverse engineering these biomechanisms and showing that not necessarily everybody can tap into them, but I think most people have a certain level of the sixth sense and other abilities, maybe to heal themselves and all sorts of things that can progress society in a fundamental way. And I think empowering the people, I think that that's one of the most important things, is for somebody to feel that they have a little bit more control over maybe their body, their life, their perspective. I think tapping into higher consciousness using altered states is one of the mechanisms and one of the keys for that.
Somebody mentioned in the chat, Kniffin mentioned, so hubristic to assume you can access the inaccessible. I think this is also where a big difference lies between one side and the other here, where there are people out there who do want to, like I think Gnostic Informant, you would be in this camp of people who want to learn as much as they can to ascend up the ladder of wisdom, but then there are others who see a danger in doing that, see a danger in themselves doing it, and would rather lean on certain established traditions that have been passed down from, let's say, patriarch to patriarch. Like, for example, orthodoxy. This is the big thing that always gets mentioned, how there is this unbroken 2,000 years of philosophy within this particular system. So who are you, mere mortal, to question it? So these are kind of like the two camps, and I'd be interested in diving into this. I know we kind of went away from psychedelics. It doesn't matter, because we're going to have another stream on psychedelics with Mike Cernovich and Styx and Health Nut coming up later on. But Gnostic Informant, let me know what you think of this divide. I'm curious for everybody else. Plus, there is a weird ticking noise that I'm hearing. I don't know where it's coming from. So, all right, we'll figure it out. I'm going to mute people who aren't talking, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. So no, and you know what? I'm not surprised we got to this place, because it all ties in together. Because this is a spiritual thing, right? This is an attempt to try to explore the depths of your mind and try to understand what all this is, right? Because there's always that argument that what if this is all just what if everything is all in your head, right? How do we know that? We can't really tell, right? Well, it's like, all right, what does that even matter? I'm here now. I can touch this. I can feel this. That's all that really matters. You have to kind of, at some point, you have to just accept what you can see and what you can feel. But as far as like what I think that I agree with DM Quest on, as far as like people finding a new spiritual path that isn't the orthodox way, we're at a point now with levels of science, the historical method, logic, philosophy, where you can take a look at the old religions of the old world. And I don't mean this in any offense to any way, but there's a lot of things that are clearly debunkable. I mean, we could get. I don't want to get. If you want, I can give some details. But
go ahead.
Just so you know, just so everyone knows, you're not going to offend me. I'm like literally
okay. Well,
I
don't even want to. I could give us details, but
I'm kind of fuming right now.
I'm chilling.
The point is, people, and he did say people with certain educational backgrounds, and he's right. People more educated that know more about history, that know more about science, that know the sun can't stand still in the middle of the day, that know the Earth's older than 6,000 years old, that know that evolution is actually a fact and not just it's a scientific theory.
Evolution's fake news.
Natural selection. I'd use
in the way that they presented it's fake news. It's definitely real on the
Gnostic,
micro level,
right.
On the macro level, it's kind of bullshit.
The reason why I'm bringing that up, you can challenge me all you want. The reason why I bring all that up is because when people see on a fundamental level, not everyone has their own interpretation of their religions. Some people are Catholic, Christian, Baptist, whatever your interpretation is, on a fundamentalist level, meaning this is literally what is true, word for word. People are looking at that and saying, I can't do it. I just can't get myself to believe that's what it is. So I want to find something real and tangible. And people are looking at DMT and the experiences that they're getting, and they're saying, whoa, something is actually happening here that I can test, that I can do, and I can do it again, and I can try it out, and I can hear this person doing it. I can see this person doing it. And it's like, let's explore this path because there's something here, rather than let's pretend that the world's 6,000 years old when we know it's not.
Oh, it didn't mean
okay.
That was
okay.
Just
So that's definitely
atheists go to the zoo to the monkey section, be like my ancestor.
So this would be a perfect also illustration of the differences in how we see things, because the subtext I'm getting is like maybe not the subtext, but like, these people are more educated, and there's a reason that they reject this stuff. They got educated, so they kind of got smarter, and if you get smarter, you kind of reject this stuff. The thing is, though, that education also entails a worldview. It's actually just as much of a worldview as everything else.
It's also tradable
in certain ways, but it also incorporates things that we cannot demonstrate.
What do you mean? You can just demonstrate things through math, through science, through historical method. You can.
Do you act and live as though human rights are a real thing?
Yeah,
Why? Demonstrate it.
because it's in our constitution. Because it's a country.
Oh,
So someone wrote it and that makes it real? So
Well,
if they didn't write it, human rights wouldn't be
If
real?
the American Revolution didn't happen, maybe we have a different story. But that's just it's where we are now. We can't change. We can't change it. It's
So
just,
in your worldview, human rights are only real because of the Constitution.
human rights are real because of life. As a human collective, our life experience has got us to this point. And we remember our history. We know it sucks to do bad shit to other people. We don't like bad shit to happen to us. So we write it down and we make constitutional republics and laws based on it.
All of what you just said is 100% subjective and not demonstratable.
What do you mean? We're living it right now.
How can you demonstrate that our collective human experience decided that something was bad and that makes it real?
Because if I walked up to you and punched you in the face, it would hurt. If you walked up to me and punched me in the face and it hurt, we agree on that. So we would say, let's not punch each other in the face.
So what, dude? I'm a Darwinist. I'm an evolutionist. I'm stronger than you. I'm going to take your shit, and that's evolution.
And then you'd be criticized for that.
They're wrong. I'm right.
But you're just like you
But
said.
that's why we have enough people in certain systems to ensure certain things work. I mean, you're right, Owen, in that
That's why I said.
Yeah,
That's why I said this all could be fake. We don't know what it is, but at some point we have to just.
well, Gnostic Informant, I think.
I can touch this, right?
Yeah, but the
I
point
think
is that
the
you
argument,
don't
though,
live
if I may-
as though those things are fake. If someone said, I run a country, I don't think human rights are real, I'm fucking all these people up, you wouldn't say, oh, well, that's just your opinion. You would say, dude, that's objectively wrong and you should not be doing that. So the worldview that you're describing, but you can't prove that. How could you prove? And then you can't prove that human rights exist. And the irony is that if you're relying on the scientific system you're describing, how can you prove it?
Prove
it, dude.
By historical method, by philosophy, by oration, there's a lot of different ways to prove it.
What historical event proves that human rights exist?
American history, period. Like you can't just say pick a historical event. It's based on collective knowledge, collective understanding.
It's based on your worldview, dog. It's based on your worldview that you can't prove. It's axiomatic.
I didn't say it wasn't, though. I never said it wasn't based on a worldview. I just said
so. What I'm saying is that when you talk
Gnostic-
about people getting educated, that involves indoctrination. I'm not using indoctrination in a negative sense, but it involves things you can't prove, and we all live according to these principles and things that we can't prove objectively because we all live in a spiritual reality, but only some people pretend that we don't. Only some people pretend I'm being objective. I'm just seeing reality as it is, but that's actually not possible.
That's why I said that. I said somebody can say all of this is just an illusion. At some point, you and I have to agree on something, and that's what I'm getting at. It's like maybe you can't prove it with a mathematical equation, but you can prove it by saying, "Hey, does it suck getting punched in the face? Yeah, me too. We agree on that. There's your proof right there. We can agree on things."
Well, I think, Gnostic, what you're trying to get at is sort of a Kantian perpetual peace argument where the faculty of human reason alone can demonstrate that there is a dialectic of morality throughout history and that we give each other the moral law. You know the basic thing. But of course, I think...
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
But the problem, again, I would agree with Owen that the problem is that it's sort of, at the end of the day, it's still built upon a heap of sand. Even like Kant had to admit near the end that his line, "I have to leave room for faith," because he knew that the guarantee of any moral system is going to lie ultimately in the metaphysical, and any sort of post-enlightenment view of morality, which essentially is what the American society and largely European society, Western civilization, has sort of been going down, which is sort of like this rootless, secularized humanism, where it's sort of like the Universal Declaration of Rights. It's based upon abstractions from the Enlightenment onwards, from deists and then later explicitly atheists. But I think that what Owen brings up a good point is that when you actually do meet rubber to road, what is the guarantor of any moral system? But I mean, I know we're straying apart from the original topic.
But there is another issue here
but-
that I think does go back to psychedelics in a certain way, which is, are we just talking about faith, which I agree does play a role, or are we also talking about a certain higher level of understanding, however you want to define it? Maybe we could say, well, there's no way to know whether we have higher understanding or not, and that's debatable. But I would still say that there are certain things like what Gnostic Informant was talking about that maybe it doesn't even matter that they're based on us all agreeing that we don't like getting punched in the face. Maybe there's something a little bit higher higher end here going on that leads us to the understanding that we actually don't want to hurt somebody else because we're going to feel a certain way about it. The other thing that I would say to address Owen's point about, well, hey, if I'm bigger and stronger than you, then I could kick your ass and I don't care about any of the things you're talking about, the thing I would add there is the whole constitutional republic thing, whatever you want to call it. The idea here is that if there are enough people that are going to agree that we don't like having people like Owen going around beating people up, then collectively they're going to decide to do something about it. And if enough people believe in that, then it's going to reinforce itself. But again, beyond just that, I still lean on there being some higher state of understanding that slowly people end up being absorbed by when they decide to not punch people in the face. That there is something that gets into them where they understand that this person is also part of me, and I am a part of this person, and so on and so forth. I think. I don't know.
I guess one thing I wanted to add in was the fact that I don't know about a lot of the religions, but, I grew up, I guess, Catholic or Christian or whatever, and there wasn't really any sort of rites of passage for direct, I guess, communion with God or Jesus or whatever. And I think that's kind of where, when I said people that are more educated or whatever, they don't follow, I guess, Christianity or religion. It's not really, it's not to disrespect religion, just more so these people want to have proof, right? They want to have direct experience. And I think that's why they gravitate towards psychedelics, because they want to commune face to face. They don't want just a theoretical discussion. And I think that's where the endogenous DMT thing is really interesting to me, is that if we reverse engineer these techniques to have communion with higher power or spirit guides or whatever, we do live in a spiritual world. That's where I'm getting at, is where the whole perspective of the spiritual nature of human existence is based on direct experience, and I think that's really key going forward, rather than just having a theoretical framework from books that were written a long time ago.
But there is another problem.
Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
So I'm super curious. I know I'm kind of in like a privileged position because I'm kind of like the antagonist, and I'm not trying to make it a gotcha. I'm actually really seriously curious. So you've done DMT a lot, obviously. And have you interacted with any kind of like entity or guide or anything like that?
Who, me?
Yes.
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I haven't. I haven't
interesting.
had any direct experience with anything.
No, but there was a breakthrough that you had. You remember when you were describing the Kundalini going up through your head? Oh,
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but I didn't have any direct visual experience with anything. I just had more so a deep sensation of being connected with the greater force, and that there was a greater force, and that it was amazing that I didn't notice the greater force before. So that's really what opened me up, was like, wow, you can have a very transcendental experience without a exogenous catalyst or substance, and not even see or hear things, and still have a very transformative experience comparable to people that have had these like complete mystical DMT experiences where they're interacting with beings and things of that nature. So it just, there's a lot, man. There's a lot that goes under the umbrella of altered states. It's not just one thing.
If you want
that's super interesting. It's funny. Mine were also mostly like solipsistic, like just me, I guess you could say. I wonder why that is. We'll probably never know, but that is super interesting.
99% of mine were like that too. It's very few times where actually something would come in like some form of a deity or whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, they weren't like that.
But when it did come in the form of a deity, what was it?
Like I said before, that's whatever. It was multiple heads, multiple hands. It was like spinning. It looked like a freaking Hindu god.
Like
I've had other experiences. I've had other experiences. At one time, it looked like Mickey Mouse. It was like a Mickey Mouse looking figure. I mean, this is what it comes to. And this is what I actually I'm interested to hear your question about this, because I actually don't think that this is anything really magical or mystical happening. I think it's deep within my psyche. That's what I think this is. But there's nothing. What's the difference? We're just talking about language anyway. What's the difference between me saying there's a scientific reason of things happening in my head, or it's magical? What's the difference other than I'm explaining it differently?
I could say one difference.
I would love to just, so like, I think that there's no way for me to say this without sounding kind of like a dick, but I really feel like that is a wall that you should really try and climb over, because actually it is a huge difference. If you wake up and you see an angel hovering above your bed, if it's just in your mind, or if it's actually a real angel that God sent to you, those are two totally different things.
How do you know
really
it was
does
God that
matter.
sent the angel to you, though?
God, then why would I need DMT to do it? If God can just do it.
That's I agree.
There
I agree.
is something happening with the DMT. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not saying that.
No. But I'm just
No,
saying, like,
no, but I want to
random,
go
like,
back
the
to what Owen
differences-
said, because I talked about the Mary sightings before. There was this book, Daimonic Reality by Patrick Harper, where he was documenting the various appearances of the Virgin Mary in places that were formerly occupied by various fertility goddesses. So she would appear as a beautiful, a young woman, and then people would see her, go to her. So the question here is, how do you know whether this is Mary, or how do you know where this was sent by God or sent by some other entity? I mean, ultimately, I think everything stems from God. I think ultimately everything is a part of God. But if we are talking about more of like the nitty-gritty, what are the various forces at work here, how would you know, Owen, whether you saw God as opposed, not saw God, but like saw an angel as opposed to something else?
That's a good question. Well, just to be totally clear, the main thing I was trying to pin down there is that it really does make a huge difference whether or not I'm qualified or anyone else is qualified to explicate what those things are. It really does matter because it hooks back into a larger cosmology. Just again, to make one more example, if I saw a ghost in my house, it matters if that's in my brain or if there's really a ghost actually living in my house. And it actually is different. And those are two different realities, and only one of them is true. Asking me, well, I guess part of the subtext of my worldview that I think, I don't want to say dancing around, but it hasn't really come up, is that I'm 100% all in on the fact that philosophy and logic can prove that God is real. But I think that there's a little bit of a gap there. And then the way I would phrase it, actually, it's funny, we're making fun of the Mormons. I actually got this quote from Brigham Young. I'm not Mormon. But once philosophy proves to you that God is real, how to approach God becomes a matter of faith and religion, and that's where philosophy kind of drops you off.
I disagree with that. I mean, because we can have a deist universe where there's a God that set everything in motion, but then doesn't affect with us at all. I was like, so people assume if there is a creator, then therefore Islam, or therefore Christianity, or therefore born again Christianity, or in particular, or something. We don't. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is just because we're created or there's some sort of creator doesn't mean that I have to do something or I'm going to be judged based on it. Or I have to worship some sort of specific name. You don't even have to say deity, because sometimes it's the same deity with a different name and different book, but it's still the same deity. And we just get so wrapped up in these little details that I feel like you miss the whole point. And it's like, I don't know. For me, it just seems pretty obvious that people in the Bronze Age were just trying to control their population. That's what it seems like to me.
You are correct in that it does not necessitate that God has a particular identity and way to approach him, but it's an incorrect assumption to keep going and say that you have proven that.
No, I haven't.
No. What I'm saying is it's possible that, yeah, God could just be this kind of like, I know you didn't say this, but it's kind of like floating cloud of like nebulous qualities. And like when Islam approaches God, they're like, oh, it's Allah. And then when Catholics approach God, they're like, oh, it's Jesus. Like, that's possible, but it's not a given. And I think that the concept that it's all the same God and stuff, I mean, this actually, I was going to say it's not tangentially, but actually it's directly relevant. I don't really think it plays out, because if I was talking with Gio and we were both describing a person, but we described a person with totally different qualities, we obviously wouldn't be talking about the same person.
I know. I was saying that more or less that none of them are true, not that all of them are true. I would say none of them are true. That's what I was saying.
Well, qualities, I think, is an important word here.
Gnostic, then what is that? Was the basis of your
Gnosticism in my worldview is that the realization that you this universe that we're in, that you had no choice to be here. You're here no matter what. That realization right there is salvation, because there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you need to worry about. This universe produced you through evolution. You're here, and that's all.
So you're not a metaphysical Gnostic, in other words.
Well,
or a theistic Gnostic.
I would lean towards more rational, but it's the thing. I don't know. Like I talk about gnosis as just realizing that we're here, and it's like, if God really wanted me to worship him all day long, he can come in my room right now and tell me that, but he hasn't done that yet. As far as I know, all I'm hearing is from priests and pastors, and I see a lot of them doing a bunch of fucked up shit too. So as far as I know, all I know is what's in front of me, and I'm trying to.
Well, but
what I
beyond
mean
the
is
priests and beyond the pastors, there is also what Owen was talking about. What are the actual things that this entity would tell you to do? And I think that does play a role in these things where I don't think there is any way for me to know whether an angel that Owen would potentially see would be an angel sent by God, or whether it's some playful DMT jester just deciding to drop in on Owen unexpectedly. But whether or not that gesture tells Owen certain things to, make him act in such a way as to help other people, or makes him think that he's the new Messiah, that's already kind of a tell for me.
This is what I'm talking about with Gnosis. Is like it actually, this comes from this relates to DMT in the sense that when you realize that you are a product of whatever this universe is trying to do, and you're just there's not, like, you don't have control over that. And having the mystical experience of DMT sort of awakens you to, not that there's a deity coming down to me, but that it's within. It's the self. It's the deep self, if that makes sense. So it's like not outward that I'm looking for, it's more inward that I'm looking for.
But what I mean is that deep self, there's kind of like a groundlessness to it if there's no longer an Imago Dei. You know what I mean? Like there is.
What is an Imago Dei for the people who don't know?
The image of the divine, right? Like there's no, like it seems like this is ultimately the problem with any sort of, not to say that you have an atheistic worldview, but I think any sort of secularized or atheistic worldview is that you're always going to sort of buttress up against this problem of existence or being itself. There's,
I'll call it more of a Spinoza type God, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's probably the root of our disagreement there. I think that when you really look at, sorry, I'm being distracted. I'm doing these exercises, trying to do this. Yeah, I know. It's like I'm trying to mimic the textures from these plate engravings. So, no, I mean, the problem is that then where does that sort of lead creation itself? Because when you talk about how come God doesn't come and show me, right? There's clear reasons why that wouldn't be advantageous to humanity to say, you, Neil, God is going to show himself to you and only you. And by the way, you know what I mean? Like that's sort of worked into it.
But that's the other reason why I'm concerned about psychedelics. Something that was not mentioned on the stream yet, which I brought up to DMT Quest like 2 years ago in a message exchange, and I'm going to bring it up now. It's the question of willpower. So for me, if I were to take psychedelics, and full disclosure, I did take the Terrence McKenna Heroic Dose 2016 with my girlfriend. But before that, even I was doing the Wim Hof method and started seeing all those visions before that, which is my way of saying that it was not the mushrooms that caused those visions to begin with. Anyway, that aside,
heroic dose with the girlfriend, very
yes,
high relationship confidence level.
That didn't last. Anyway, going back to what
Japanese or Chinese one.
Chinese number one.
Okay.
Anyway, when we're talking about willpower, if there was something that I took, it feels like I'm busting open a door before I'm ready to see what's on the other side, like false enlightenment, if you will.
You're busting some with that Chinese.
Oh, Lordy Geo. Anyway, everybody subscribe, by the way, for me getting some. Anyway, when it comes to busting...
No, this is an incel only podcast.
When it comes to busting open things before you are ready to experience them, I think there is something to be said about, like, the disagreement that I would have with Gnostic Informant is that I think that we are here to train ourselves in our own kind of individual way, where we're all at different levels, and some people require, the kind of education where if they screw up, then they're going to have to learn the harder way. It's going to be rougher and tougher. And then other people who acquire something easier with less resistance, let's say, maybe they'll get to a higher level faster. Regardless, there is still a kind of trial people have to undergo in their lives. And I pretty much think that every single thing we ever experience in our embodied existence is a test in a certain way. You know, everything from how we speak to people, from how we conduct ourselves, how we raise our voice. I believe that either nothing matters or everything matters, so I'm going to say that everything matters, and when we use an external substance, something tells me that we're kind of cheating, that we're taking something without actually exercising our own willpower to experience it. So I'm curious what the panel thinks about that.
I've been talking a lot, so if DMT Quest, you want to talk? I could answer that though.
Is it cheating?
I don't think.
I don't look at it as it's cheating per se. I think there's a risk involved if a person doesn't have the right setting and all that. But I wouldn't necessarily call it cheating because these substances are here and we have access to them. So I don't think they would be here if we weren't supposed to have that access if we needed them, you know. So I think they're a good first step, and then after that, then people can explore their own consciousness, knowing what exists out there. But I wouldn't
maybe
consider
they're
it cheating.
there though for themselves, because the mushrooms, they get some benefit out of the whole experience too. They get to be, you know, replanted through the pooping and all that. So in a way, I look at plants as being much more, much more carnivorous than we give them credit for. You know, when we think of plants, we think of like these peaceful things, but I think that they could be just as brutal as a lot of the animals.
So like if somebody, let's say somebody secretes like greater levels of endogenous DMT, would you say that, you know, that's kind of a form of cheating?
I disagree, because that is still something that they had to develop by utilizing their own body, by utilizing their own instruments. And you could say that there may be a gray area when, let's say, we're talking about diet. We're talking about, like, if I eat the right kind of food, my brain's going to work better, I'm going to function better. You know, we all have to eat, obviously. So it's still a matter of we do have to take something in order to get something out. But that's also a very Kabbalistic thing where all of us have a certain degree of wanting to receive. And the idea in the Kabbalah, for example, is transmuting that desire to receive into the desire to give for the sake of giving, as opposed to giving for the sake of receiving. And that's why I think that we're all going to be, to a certain extent, receiving sustenance from the earth, receiving pleasure from the experience that we have, and you could say that it kind of attaches us into this world. But I guess the big question is, to what extent do we want the reception to be, and whether or not this reception with the psychedelic state, for example, would further bind us into this attachment that is going to be hard to get out of, because we are relying on an external substance to get to that sense of enlightenment.
Yeah, if you feel like that's the only way to reach a certain level of enlightenment or insights into the spiritual nature of reality, then yeah, I don't think that you're really utilizing it in the manner that it would be optimized for sure. I agree with that.
By the way, I think Gnostic Informant had to go right now to another stream because it is approaching 7 o'clock. Just so you know, that is what ended up happening there. But I think it was a very interesting conversation with him.
Oh, he didn't rage quit.
No. Where
That would have been bad. Like the second
I
psychedelic
felt like the road was going towards us like hunkering down on atheism. I was like, I'm kind of okay with this, but that's cool. He had to bounce. I get it.
No, he had to bounce. He told me in private that he had a stream at 7 o'clock. It was supposed to be
Actually,
at 12
he
noon.
said, "Can you add me back in the little chat we have?"
Oh,
sorry, not to break.
all
not to
right,
break
there we
from
go.
the studio situation here.
There we go. Okay, I was just saying, Gnostic, I wasn't sure if you left right now because you have the other thing, but no, you did not leave because of that. There was...
Just didn't want to be rude and answer the phone while everyone's talking and stuff like that.
all right, no problem. But you are going to have a stream coming up later on, right? You're going to have a stream 7 o'clock.
I got one.
Excellent.
Minutes, yeah.
Well, also, I want you to plug that as well. So where could people... No, okay, fine. This is how generous I am. Plug where
It's
you're
not
going...
it's someone else's. Don't worry about it. Someone
All
else.
right.
No, I'm serious. It's someone else's stream. Don't worry about it.
All right. But anyway, we were talking before about...
I made that mistake once or twice on stream. Like, go and watch this other thing. And I'm like, fuck, I shouldn't say that. Like, one time I said, what was it? Who was streaming right now? I think it was either Eggy or Jay Dyer. And I'm like, Jay Dyer's streaming right now. Oh, fuck, no, then people couldn't go. I made that mistake before.
Yeah. No, I get that.
But anyway, Gnostic, I'm
I have
curious...
nothing against Eggy or Jay Dyer. I'm just saying
Yes.
for the kayfabe of the... Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm curious, like a Gnostic, where would you put yourself in this thing that I was illustrating with the willpower question?
Well, I mean, It's an interesting question. Like, you know, the Muslims talk about Mech 2 of being everything is just destiny, and that it's all God's will, and you know, morality is coming from above. But then I have to question that, because if morality was coming from above and it's not just free will, then why isn't everyone making the right choices? Why is everyone?
Oh my God. Can we go into that? Can we? Because you have to bounce soon. Can we go into that?
Yeah, of course. That's why
Okay.
I brought it up.
So-
I figured we're getting this way.
Okay, so, do you think that?
Finish him.
No, it's not like that. Do you think that, let's say, female genital mutilation is wrong? That it's wrong to do that to little girls?
I've heard this argument a million times, but let's just go through it. Yes,
Okay, so
I already know where you're going, but
if we killed everyone on Earth that thought it was wrong, and everyone left on Earth thought it was right, would it be right?
no.
So that proves that morality is not a human construct. You just explained to me that if every human on Earth,
But
what?
But that's just how I feel based on my life experiences. You have to go into my.
But if you were dead, it would still be wrong.
But that's what I'm saying. To them, their life experience, however the fuck they got to that answer that they think mutilating people is wrong, right? That's based on some experiences that they went through.
They're wrong. They're wrong.
They're wrong to our worldview.
No,
Yes.
they're objectively wrong. They are actually wrong. It is actually wrong. They are incorrect. They are just
Why
like
is it
someone who
objectively
sees
wrong? This is the same question you asked me. Why is it objectively wrong? See, now I'm just doing
because you have an implanted. It is actually part of your mind, a moral faculty that can be developed to more accurately and less accurately perceive rightness and wrongness. And when someone explains to you the process of doing female genital mutilation and you recoil from it, that is an accurate perception of morality your mind is making, just like when you look at a red shirt and notice that it is red. The morality is external to your mind and you are accurately perceiving it. And that's why, I'll let you talk. That's why you were correct. You instinctually answered, you're correct. If we killed everyone on Earth that thought it was wrong, would it still be wrong? Yes, because
Well,
its
we know
wrongness
it's
is
wrong,
not
though.
conditional.
because of my experiences and my knowledge, my
I mean,
nose.
look at women in the West nowadays. Is that right? Either.
So that means that if we killed everyone who thought it was wrong, that it wouldn't
If I
be
was
wrong.
an animal, if I was an ape that didn't know better, I might think it's okay.
You would be wrong.
Animals might think it's okay.
So you have to amend your answer and say that if we killed everyone on Earth who thought it was wrong, it would not actually still be wrong.
I think it's wrong.
But if we killed everyone on Earth who thought female genital mutilation was wrong, it would not actually be wrong. People were doing it. There would be nothing wrong occurring.
So say that. Slow down. Say that.
Okay.
Again.
I go around. We kill everyone on Earth who thinks that female genital mutilation is wrong. Every living person thinks it's good, and they're doing it.
Okay.
You're explaining that
I think it's wrong still.
yeah, okay, but so you think it's wrong, but it's just arbitrary. In that scenario, actually nothing wrong is occurring.
Right.
So you can imagine a planet where everyone's doing female genital mutilation and nothing wrong is occurring.
So, but this is a linguistic. If everyone's okay, it's like everyone's doing female mutilation. The thing is, why? They're just doing it for a reason. They're not just.
It doesn't matter why they're wrong. They're doing some fucked up weird shit. No, it doesn't.
Well, they believe it's the purity of the feminine.
That's where this argument is bullshit. Because
No.
Why?
You're trying. Look, I'm saying this seriously. Like, I'm not joking. I'm saying this out of love because I care about your spirit. You are trying to reach for an explanation, but why they're doing it doesn't matter. If I rape someone, hold on. No, it doesn't matter. If I rape someone, it doesn't matter why I did it. It's still wrong. If I murder someone, doesn't matter why I did it. It's still wrong. And in the scenario we're describing,
I can answer why. Can you answer why it's wrong? Is because God told you?
Because there's a morality encoded into the physical universe, and
No,
it does come from God.
It's wrong because when you see a woman get raped and you see them screaming and crying and in pain, and they're telling you this, that's how we know that. There's a thing we can see and we can demonstrate. And
so those girls would be screaming in the scenario where we killed everyone who thought it was wrong. You're explaining why it's still wrong. It would still be wrong in that scenario.
Is that happening right now?
It doesn't matter. It's a thought experiment.
It does matter.
It doesn't.
Exactly. You could think a thought experiment is if I lived.
That's what I mean. How do we know it's wrong? What if someone's into what if a woman is into edge play and it's simulating the which I mean, by the way, Owen, we have to avoid that.
And it'd be right.
YouTube.
If she's into it, that's right.
Okay,
but
just
then
to
when
be
we
clear,
say that the actual act itself is in itself morally an objective level terrible. So then if a woman says that I want that to happen to me, then that you would say, okay, you have a mental problem. That's terrible.
That's what I would think. Right. Exactly. I would think that based on my knowledge, based on my understanding, based on experience of my life. I didn't just wake up one day and just understand what rape is. I had to learn what rape is.
Exactly. You're correct.
I wasn't born with it though. I had to be taught that.
Who cares? You're still correct.
That's why animals.
But I would argue that this argument that you're born. I don't know. I think you are born with some form of moral sense.
Have you seen how cheetahs and apes act in nature? They do fucked up shit.
Yes.
They eat those balls and shit, dude.
Yes. There's an intrinsic difference between man and animals. You are correct.
Where we're at. It's evolution. It comes down to evolution.
Now.
No, I want to get to.
Wait. Let me get one more. This is so interesting.
Okay.
Dude, how could evolution tell you that rape is wrong? If I go rape 100 women and I have 100 more
there
kids,
is a thing called the rape ape theory, by the way. There is something called the rape ape theory, by the way, where they say that men who are more capable of it actually had an evolutionary advantage because they could conquer more peoples and spread their genes more. There is that theory. By the way, shout out to my friend Matthew Parrott. Shout out to Keith.
Wait, hold on. Let's get a response from Gnostic.
Anyway, I'll stop. Wait, I'll stop pushing it, but I just want to say seriously, someone told me that when I was 19, what I just told you, and I thought about it for 10 years and I could never put it down. And that is proof that God is real. 100%. Yes, it is, dude, because there is objective morality. And I think that later when you think about it, you'll imagine a planet.
No, I thought about it for years too. I've been hearing the same argument. I already knew what you were going to say.
But you explained to me why I'm correct. You said they're screaming and you hear it and you know it's wrong. Exactly. But you hearing it doesn't make it wrong.
It's wrong. It always comes back to the individual. It always comes back to how much knowledge and understanding and life experience and evolution. And Gio made up a good point saying that in some cases, natural selection favors the bad people because they conquer, which explains why we have fucked up humans in our society.
Okay, last question. Can someone misperceive reality? Can someone perceive reality incorrectly?
Of course.
So then it doesn't matter that you're appealing to someone perceiving reality incorrectly.
It doesn't. But at some point, you have to come to your own understanding at some point. And you're right. We can all just be like, nothing matters. Nobody knows, it's all an illusion. We can do that if we want. But at some point, you gotta just get real about it.
Exactly. Get real. It's real. Exactly, bro.
There is something going to blow your mind. There's a Science Direct article.
Exactly. It's real.
Posted. Science Direct, forcible rape and evolutionary perspective. This is the rape ape theory. So this is going to blow your mind for all you science cells out there. Oh my God. Terrible. Anyways,
wait, hold on. Hold on. We're going to go back to the psychedelics, but I wanted to find out, although it's probably going to be too long.
You want to talk about rape ape?
Hold on. Owen, when you were talking about this spiritual understanding where you can prove that this is objectively right or something is objectively wrong, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but beyond just saying that you believe that there is this spiritual objectivity, how would you be able to let us know whether that's the case or not, beyond just saying that this is spiritually objective?
Because everyone, in order to be a sane person, acts and behaves as though certain things are wrong. And when we encounter contraindications in those departments, literally no one treats them as subjective. So everyone that puts forth this view comes really strong out of the gate of like, well, it's just my opinion, it's just my view. But if I said, hey, I'm going to go beat my dog because it peed on my rug, you would have an intrinsic reaction and say that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. You would never say, it's not like a shirt. If it's subjective, it's just like a shirt.
Okay, but to be
I can demonstrate to you why I'm right.
Tell me.
Okay, law codes. Let's look at law codes. Let's look at the earliest law codes we have, the Uranamu law code. This is before Hammurabi's code, right? Where it talks about what we should do to people who we think are guilty is we throw them over a cliff into the lake. If they survive, that means God said they were innocent. Then you keep progressing. You get to eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. And that's Hammurabi's code. Then you can keep progressing, and then you get into like biblical Deuteronomy stuff. As you progress through evolution, getting better and better. This is microevolution, not macro. As we progress and learn more things about ourselves, our law codes get better and better. All of a sudden, it's love your neighbor. All of a sudden, you got Jesus and Confucius and Buddha all saying the same thing around the same time. Wow, that's amazing. That's how you know our morality has been progressing.
What if there's an evolutionary advantage to rape?
Can I respond?
Come on, bro. Like,
you saying progressive and better implies an objective standard. If it was truly subjective, then you wouldn't be able to say better. A red shirt is not better than a blue shirt because it's subjective.
Wait, to be
no, it's not. It's not linguistic. It is actually intrinsically related
Gnostic,
to what you're
I
saying.
just informed you of an evolutionary advantage to rape. So are you going to base morality on evolution?
No, it could go bad too. There's ways we can descend bad and evolution as well. That's what natural selection is. We can die out. We can think that it's cool.
Right.
We can think it's cool and just fuck the whole climate up and all die. That could happen.
But I'm saying that. But my point, okay, as provocative as it is, and I know it's funny, haha, 4chan humor. But I'm saying the point being is that when you predicate something as deep as human morality into a framework that is purely materialistic, then you can justify any sort of will to power. You know what I mean? That's my point. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at.
You can. I'll accept that. You can.
All right.
No, but to be devil's
Holy
advocate,
crap!
but to be devil's advocate a bit here.
Back in the day, my buddy Matthew was talking about this in the DMs, and I go, "What the fuck is this crap?" Now I know. Now I've demonstrated the use of the rape ape theory.
Yes, indeed. And now I'm thinking about all those gooning orangutans. You remember what Sonny was talking about? And
God.
yeah, no, but to be a bit of a devil's advocate
They
here.
only do it in captivity, Lev.
No, but to be a bit of a devil's advocate here for the other position, which I wouldn't say, like, I'd say here at least I'm closer to, like, even though I'm not somebody who would want to be in an organized religion, I still lean closer to the idea that there is this spiritual sense that people would have over time, and it could go down too, but I would say that there is some kind of a spiritual understanding people would get over time, wherein the unmoved mover of certain laws would not be only for convenience well, let's not punch each other, but there is also a certain understanding that would develop in tandem with the people that would encourage this to be passed on. But to be devil's advocate for that position, we could say, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is just, Owen, what you were talking about, if you have all these people, except for like the craziest, who all detest certain things and would find them morally objectionable, well, maybe all those people grew up in this certain way with a certain system and ways of being, that they're just used to being in this particular pattern, and it's very materialistic, and there's nothing more than that. I'm not saying I believe that, but that would be the counter I would give to what you were saying. Well, it's most people, so it would be then most people decided on this, and that's why it's objectively correct. Would that be wrong or not?
Well, the thing is, I think that having to appeal to someone that is raised in a situation that makes their mind deficient proves what I'm saying. You have to point to someone like, well, if you were raised in a room of funhouse mirrors, you wouldn't be able to see in 3D. So it's really just subjective. But the fact that you have to appeal to someone who's raised in a kind of demented situation shows that we all think that healthy, well-developed moral faculties would perceive things in this way, which we all act like, by the way, every day.
But there are still examples. You could look at the Middle East. You can look at various places where things are not so sunny, despite there being a very heavily religious, very based, groundwork on the faith that people have. And there you could say that things are proceeding very similar to how they would have been during the times of Hammurabi, if not before, in certain jurisdictions. So I wouldn't be able to say that the majority of the people who would condone that or who would look the other way are somehow morally equal to people who were raised under this very different kind of system of laws. Not to say that this is the only reason why they act this way, as far as like people who were raised under this different system of laws, but to be devil's advocate again for Gnostic's position here, maybe we could leave the spirituality aside and say, this part of the world, look at the way that they conduct their society, look at the systems of laws they have, then look at the system of laws in this other place. Wouldn't that be sufficient?
Well, the thing is, though, in order to fully lean into that position, though, you would have to be yourself relativist about the whole situation, which no one is. You would have to look at the development, for example, of the U.S. transitioning from a slavery-based, it's not slavery-based, but we had slavery, transitioning to not having slavery. And you would have to see that as a lateral move where nothing actually improved. But no one does that because we know that it's better to not have slavery. If you really thought this way, you would say, well, the U.S. got rid of slavery, but it was arbitrary. I mean, yeah, I guess I think that's cool, but maybe it was bad, maybe it was good. Who can say? We can't really say. But no one lives and operates that way.
Well, the people who have slave markets right now in Libya, they'd operate that way. You know, they maybe
But
not have that much of a problem with that.
So then why this is where the question comes in. Why does it happen then and not 500 years before that, when Christianity was ruling the West? Why does it happen after the Enlightenment, when people stop being run by the church or run by monarchies, and we have more rational thinkers and we have a scientific movement? Why all of a sudden liberal and human rights all of a sudden a big deal when it wasn't?
Well, these ideas are more ancient than people know. I mean, they've been in antiquity. A lot of these ideas were present. Sorry, go ahead, Owen.
Well, it's also because people are imperfect and they're constrained by their material and historic situation. That doesn't mean that those constraints then become what is real, but those constraints exist and are a factor. So, for example, it was a lot easier. Civil War is a perfect example. It was a lot easier for people in the North to say, we sat down and thought about it. I mean, slavery is kind of bad. The people in the South, it was more difficult for them to do that because their society was based on slavery, at least in part. But that doesn't mean that you can then make the leap to say, so yeah, slavery is just kind of a wash.
Well, it actually was relative to whoever like in the South, they needed slavery because that was their economy. So they had to sort of like convince themselves that, oh, it's okay, let's just keep it going. So it actually does come down to your understanding and your knowledge and your like I was saying, your experience and where your situation is.
Were they wrong to do that?
They were wrong. In my opinion, in my worldview, it was wrong. In your world, we agree on that. But there might be someone who thinks they were right. And we think they're wrong, and we say objectively that's wrong. But it really,
all right, DMT Quest, you settle this. You are the one who's going to settle this.
Well, it's going to be a closed loop. I feel like it's going to be a closed loop. I do want to hear what you have to say, but Anyway.
It's a difficult discussion. You guys are all over the place, man. I mean, I guess one of the things that come to mind in terms of inherent morality within humans, I guess, are we discussing adults, or are we discussing like all, I guess, age ranges? Because I think it's somewhat well known that like young children can be pretty abusive towards animals. Like it's almost like a regular thing, not like burning a dog or anything like that, but pulling on the tail and kind of just like physically sort of aggravating animals seems to be pretty common amongst kids. So is it sort of like a morality develops based on societal sort of, telling the kid not to do that? Or that's what I'm saying, like these things that Cyclops is bringing up in terms of what's inherent to us as humans, I don't know if it's so cut and dry. It seems like it could be a little bit complicated, especially when you're looking at young children and how they treat each other, how they treat animals, with no sort of guidance or parental supervision and things of that nature.
That's a good point. There's cases where kids who have like no guidance at all, and they're just like insane. Like there's cases where kids are like almost like animalistic in certain cases, but where's their morality that was given to them from above? Why don't they have that? They don't have any understanding. They don't know the world yet. They weren't taught anything.
But maybe there is something spiritual about the understanding itself, where we are more like the vessels through which either we get the understanding or the understanding passes us by when we're raised by wolves or something. I think this is why there would have been, primitive people back in the day and still primitive people around today, that they don't have that understanding. The difference that I would say is that Owen sees it as being a spiritual understanding, while you see it as being more of a practical understanding. That I would say is the big difference.
This is the last thing I'm going to say because I got to go. I actually think evolution is spiritual. I think there is something insanely deistic going on with evolution. That's what I think. I mean,
why'd you bury this till now, Gnostic? Why?
That could be a whole nother.
Tell me why.
No, we're gonna continue doing this. Gio, listen. Gnostic, listen, we're going to have a Gnostic debate coming up, Gnosticism versus Christianity. This is happening on January 6th. A very interesting date, to say the least.
I'll see if it might be a later date, but hopefully the 6th. I just have to see if Tyler Hamilton wants to join me and as my tag team partner. So.
And everybody, listen. Follow follow Gnostic Informant, youtube.com/Gnostic Informant, and twitter.com. It's Neil. Hold on, I'm gonna get the name right over here.
Debate partner, Gnostic. What's his name?
Miguel Connor. IN Gnostic Radio.
That's right. And this is amazing. And we're going to have... Okay, so twitter.com, Neil, SENDLAK1. So go there, follow Neil on Twitter. Neil's going to be back for much more. Because listen, I love this. I love the fact that this is not an echo chamber. You know, that we are able to actually have clashes of ideas. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, and it was nice meeting you, man. It really was. And
Yeah, dude. Yeah, this is super fun, man. I know we like disagree. It's not like bad blood. It's a really good time for all of us. So yeah, man. Thanks.
I enjoy it, man.
Cool.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
See ya. And guys, I think we're going to be transitioning right now into the... and Owen, this is kind of a surprise because I don't know if I mentioned this to you fully, but what we sometimes do on the stream is bringing out the GIMP. No, bringing out the... you could say it's sort of a GIMP, the Twitter Spaces. So I'm going to have the Twitter Spaces superimposed on the screen. This is totally up to you. You're a dad now. You're a family man. You can, you may have to go right now. I have no idea. But since I noticed that you were on the Twitter Spaces app before, what we could do, if you're interested, is you could sign off of here, or you could keep the icon. It doesn't really matter. But actually, it may be better to sign off. But anyway, sign off of here. Go into the Twitter Spaces link that I'm going to send you. And we can continue this with other people going into the call. Same thing, DMT Quest with yourself as well. If you're interested in sticking around, totally up to you. If not, we're still going to continue doing this with the Twitter Spaces for a while. Get all of your guys' opinions on the conversation. And I am going to send the link right now. Go into that link. All the people who are in the chat right now, go into that link because I'm going to start the Twitter Spaces pretty much right now. It's going to take me a little bit of time, though. So, Gio, I would love for you to do some shout-outs of the chat, as well as mention any updates going on in your world, and any final thoughts of this particular conversation as well. Well, let's start with Owen, DMT, and then you, Gio, and I'm just going to do the whole transition right now. So it's still going to be on this stream. So, yes. And I'm sending the link right now here. You guys could see it in the chat, twitter.com/i/spaces.
I might have to,
yeah.
I don't know if I could piece it, or I might have to cut it early.
All right, no problem.
Maybe I'll go into space a little bit.
Yeah, just a smidgen in the space.
So,
yeah.
Owen, we didn't get to show Owen's book properly. Actually.
No, we did not. So let us show Owen's book.
Chat. We have super chats.
We do have the super chats. So I know, Gio, can you look at the super chats and then mention them yourself right now?
I have only one from Kronkicks. I refuse to donate. You can't make me sneed. Well, Kronkicks, you have $5 of your mammons. So I don't know. So let's do shout-outs first. So we always have our regulars like Lisa Bode, Hopper 8338, Kronkicks, Knifin, Deaf Operator, Massive McGee, Philip Daniel, of course, King Salmonfish, who's probably going to be in the Twitter space, Elmer Jr. What is that? Elmer Jr. Jublag, Stop asking for my name. Define Divine, myself came back recently. Milo, Anon Livestream, Richard Galanti, Wyram Hatcher. Sorry, I always fucked that up.
No, I thought it was Worm Hatcher. Wasn't it Worm Hatcher?
Cross hatching. I'm gonna call him that from now on. Wong Kar-wai Superfan XO. Is Wong Kar-wai is the anime with the kid that always cries? Is that what, the sad boy? Is that the one? I have to look it up. Bash Ram, sorry. And on live stream, we got Geo. No, I'm doing the Ghost True Capitalist Radio thing. If you guys want to change your name to troll us, that'd be cool. It'd be like True Capitalist Radio. Hillspawn. We got Pylos. Who else am I missing here? Let me see. We got Aaron Woodley. The ABC. I believe ABC also has a super chat where he said, good show, or I needed a super chat or something. Tim Stump. Elmer Jr. I already said Jude Bag. So I think those are the shout outs.
Mm-hmm.
And Owen, please tell us about your book. It's all of your collected comics and illustrations.
If you made it all the way here and you just want more, yeah, no, I dropped it on Amazon. If you search my name on Amazon, it comes up, or it's on my Twitter feed.
I'm going to post it in the chat one more time. I'm doing two things at once, though, but you can't find it in the description of this video. I always plug all the stuff in the description of the video, so check that out.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's like all the comments I've made in my studio so far. If you're into the vibe that you've probably gotten from me talking for a while now, you'd probably be into it. And even if you're not, you might be. So definitely check it out.
Including the recent one that was trending was this guy who was a furry in the VR pod, if I recall. And he's like, I'm having several different pleasure experiences once. And the one guy is like, I don't think that's a good idea. The guy's like, and the other one is the famous, infamous line that Redditors use. What is it called? Why can't you let people enjoy things? That was hilarious.
Yeah,
I've seen that. It's trending recently.
Yeah, the meme ones kind of go around and then they get edited, so it's really funny. Sometimes they'll circle back to me and I'm like, oh, someone made this person like a weird character, or like change the meaning of it. It's kind of cool actually being in like the little ecosystem, I guess you could say.
The alien one at the keyboard, that's always hilarious. When I see that.
We're starting in a bit. We're going to be transitioning into the Twitter space right now. Everybody who's listening to this, go into the Twitter. Actually, no, stick around on the live stream. This live stream's not going anywhere. But for those who want to listen in on the Twitter space as well, go there. We are also live streaming all of this on DLive, on Odyssey, on Twitch, on all that great stuff, as well as YouTube. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube, breaktherules.tv, go there and subscribe right now. So DMT Quest and Owen, I sent you an invite to the Twitter space. What this basically involves is if you're on a computer, just exit out of here, or you could keep the webcam on, I guess, depending on what you want. But I would exit out and take your phone. And take your phone. Yeah, be sure to mute, by the way, this session over here. But I would take the phone and I would go into the Twitter spaces and I would talk through the Twitter space, and I'm going to have the Twitter space displayed proudly on this view. And I am going to be changing the views right now. So let's see if the various machinations I did to StreamYard ended up working out, shall we? So here we go. Here is the Twitter space, and I got to get my camera in here as well. So
I'll hang for a minute. I might have to bounce eventually, but I will. But I'll hang for a minute. Yeah.
Excellent. Nice. All right. Well, there we go. So, and by the way, Owen, if possible, please share the Twitter space as well. It's always a big help to get that. So let's see. Camera. That is the last thing. I got to put my own camera in here, which I have not done yet. So I'm going to put that in a bit. Here we go. Let's see. This is all figuring out. But, I think I should start this Twitter space. I mean, right now I have people who are waiting. So we have, we have Owen. So here you go, Owen. Invite to co-host. Why not? Here you go. Owen, are you there, buddy? Let's see. Right now you are a listener, but I invited you to speak. And also, here we go, requested, add a speaker. Here you go. What's up, Owen? Oh, you muted yourself. You got to unmute yourself. There we go.
Mic check.
Whoa, you are incredibly loud. Speak a little bit further away, but otherwise, I think we're good.
Cool.
Excellent. And
what about now? Test 1, 2, 3.
It's not bad. There was a bit of an echo going. There was a bit of a hiss.
Yeah, I still had the StreamYards one on.
Gotcha. And there is a little bit of a hiss, but it's not that bad of a hiss. Honestly, I'd say that whenever you're not talking, you can mute yourself temporarily just so that the hiss goes away, because it is a very audible hiss, and I'm not exactly sure where that's from. It could just be your phone. But anyway, Owen, for all the people who are here right now, just give your thoughts to the conversation that we had before, and if people want to see that conversation, and this is still the continuation of that live stream, just go to breaktherules.tv. You should see it at the top over there. You see the link written down, and you could find out about it. So just tell us about your experience with this particular stream, the conversation, in short, to get people enticed to watch this from the very beginning.
Can you hear me right now? I just want to make sure before I talk.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Cool. Yeah, man, I thought it was really cool. Naturally, if people have different worldviews about something, sometimes it's a little bit like, okay, now we're in this closed loop going back and forth. But what I think is interesting about those conversations is like hitting little, not minutia, but little things of like, oh, here's a little spot we have a difference of view on. Here's a little spot. That's kind of the most interesting thing for me about talking with other people. So yeah, man, I thought it was really cool.
Excellent. And I finally got the virtual camera over here for myself to work, which is great. So let's get some more people in here. We got King Salmonfish. I'm inviting you as the speaker over here. So, King Salmonfish, what's on your mind? Have you seen the stream? What do you think? King Salmonfish, you are muted right now. Please unmute yourself so that we can get a load of what you have to say. And if not, I'm going to add in the disharmonious heretic, Philip Daniel. What's up, my friend? So go for it, speak. I have no idea what happened to King Salmon. Oh, King Salmonfish, can you speak right now? Yo.
Yeah. Sorry. When you give me the ability to speak, it kicks my Bluetooth earbud off for some reason. I have to reset it.
No problem at all.
I don't understand.
So what did you think of the stream?
Absolutely fascinating. I lean more towards what Owen had to say about objective morality. And I was actually briefly getting into a discussion in the chat with Lisa, whoever that is, about basically like moral nuance. So I've been exploring some of this moral philosophy recently in regards to the culture war and some of the stuff that's going on. And my take is kind of that no matter what you do, somebody always gets hurt in some way or another. So like if there's a Karen anywhere out there in existence, no matter what you do, they're going to be emotionally wounded by you doing anything or existing at all. But to make it more down to earth, we have to kill things to eat. There are many situations that arise of painful disagreements that definitely escalate really frequently into physical damage, even though I believe emotional and psychological damage is just as real as anything else. So it gets to this point morally where it's like, well, if somebody's breaking into your home and trying to kill your family, like, is it okay then to kill somebody? You know? So that's kind of where I kind of said moral nuance, and this chick Lisa was like, well, that's not really nuance. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it kind of, I imagine, feels like it. I've been in situations where you have to kind of process and do decision making. So even if you settle on something that is in line with your own beliefs at the end of things and you don't really shift, there's still a uncomfortable emotional process of having to figure out what to do. Like I was in a bunch of crazy situations where I was in jail not too long ago, and you know, a bigger dude like stepped up on me and he was on some complete made up nonsense, trying to like, you know, just talk shit about me and defame me and all this stuff. And I had to like choose not to rip his throat out at the end of that short fight where I overpowered him.
Wow. It's tough, tough in the clink. Hello, King Salmonfish.
Yeah,
all right.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it's tough, and I mean, not that I had any experience, but I could just imagine that is a whole other kind of life, just being in prison. Like, talk about a psychedelic experience. Like, what would you say that experience was of you actually being in the clink, being in the pokey, whatever you want to call it?
Being a GP prison yard.
Dude, it was basically, to really summarize the story, I actually predicted the pandemic. I got some insider information from some virologists.
Oh, by the way, we got to be careful on talking about this particular subject because of YouTube and yada, yada, yada. We got to use code words, so.
Okay, anyway, I'm not going to touch back on that, but what ended up happening was I did some good stuff, but like nobody had any idea what was happening. So I was like brutally misinterpreted, and then the authorities kind of got on some straight nonsense, and I was actually tortured mentally. I was assaulted. I was drugged. It was really, 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 really messed up. And I actually drove a bunch of people completely insane and had one dude drinking out of a toilet. And then I got kicked out of jail because I'm just like monstrous. And you know, anyway, like everyone admitted to their corruption is kind of like, it happened multiple times. Like everyone just admitted the whole thing was a massive case of corruption. So I don't know, like, how was it? It was glorious, dude. I mean, it was it was like a full-blown spiritual, moral experience, but it was also like incredibly uncomfortable, the whole thing.
The
It was
smells, I
very-
imagine, weren't great either. Like one time when I went on a school field trip to the local prison, one of the things that really stuck with me was how bad the bathroom smelled. Well, just a general area, because the bathroom was like in the room. You just smelled all of this horrible, stench, and there weren't even that many people there at all. Like, I don't think there was one prisoner, yet the smell still remained. Was that an experience that you had?
Oh, it was terrible. This place was definitely in violation of like every conceivable code and all kinds of human rights and all that stuff. And when the dude was drinking out of the toilet, he was like, because I basically broke his mind and drove him completely insane because he tried to destroy me. So like he literally was drinking out of a toilet, and I did some calculations. I'm like, over the years, there's probably been 1,000 just straight crazy people, and like just whatever you want to call them, criminals, bad people, but just like I'm like, this dude is basically possessed by shit ghosts right now. You know what I mean? Like he's drinking out of like, I'm like, there's no way this is good. Like this is so messed up. Like
All right,
It was-
Owen Cyclops, what do you think of all this? And I saw earlier John was here. I want to make sure John comes back, and I want to get John's opinion on this as well. But Owen, what do you think of what King Salmonfish was talking about right now?
Hey man, I'm I was on the edge of my seat. I love it.
Excellent. Any questions for King Salmonfish before we move on?
Yeah, King Salmonfish. So, I'm trying to think of the prison lingo. Did you have to carry a bone crusher with you, or was it all like you didn't have to carry anything with you? You didn't have to carry a piece.
Nah, dude, I was straight ungovernable. Like I just went at it from an angle they had never seen before. I disabled the entire command structure and infrastructure of the facility while I was in the hole with a Queen of Hearts and a Seven of Clubs. And the maintenance dude, who was the guy who had been working at that place the longest, I mean, he had seen every criminal mastermind and psychotic murderer and violator you can imagine. And he was like, what is this, dude? Like, what is going on right now? And so that was, I just came at them with some, by the end of it, they put me in a red jumpsuit for like being an escape risk and just horrifyingly dangerous. And then I got kicked out because they're like, we literally, the entire place has fallen into pure chaos. He can't stay here. And they literally said to me, like, this is going to be the fastest discharge we've ever done. Just get out of this place. And then, they took me to a human trafficking hospital, basically, and, probably made about $3 million in insurance money trying to drug me into a coma. And then they basically tried to Ted Kaczynski me, but I played it a little bit better than Ted. And so I'm free. But like, there's just kind of this whole official attempt to smear my name kind of thing going on. But I don't particularly hold any, like I just want to let it rest, basically. Like, screw it, whatever. It was all very enlightening.
Very interesting. And now we finally got DMT Quest in the house. I really enjoyed you coming back on, buddy. I appreciate it. I think the last time you came in when we actually had a conversation was with your friend Dennis McKenna, who was the brother of Terrence McKenna. So for all the people who are watching this saying, who are these people? I don't know who these people are. I am the host of Break the Rules, BreakTheRules.tv, and the mission that we have here, all the people who are involved with BTR, is to bring together all the people who otherwise would never have a chance of speaking with each other. I think we accomplished this today, as we have accomplished this on other days. But anyway, DMT Quest, I added you to be able to speak. So let me know if you can speak. I would be very interested in what you thought of the episode. And we are still in the episode, just so you know, everybody who is here, this is being live streamed. This is being live streamed to BreakTheRules.tv, to DLive, to Twitch, to Odyssey, to everything. But the main link is BreakTheRules.tv. You go there, you subscribe, you like, you share, you do all the things you have to do to survive. But anyway, DMT Quest, let me know if you can come in and speak. This is, by the way, on your cell phone. This is where you have to do it. Otherwise, you cannot speak. You got to be able to use your phone to speak in case you're using the desktop. But anyway, while he is not here yet, let's hear from our good friend and one of the patrons of Break the Rules, Andrew Rogers. So, Tux loves you, aka let me know what's going on your side of the street. You are a tech wizard, and I think you would appreciate the tech wizardry that I was able to accomplish today with StreamYard, where I was able to actually give Owen Cyclops a big avatar, which you cannot do on StreamYard, except if you know CSS like I do, and you could just hack the entire system and make it work in your favor.
Oh, very nice. As someone who's generally tried to avoid the front end as much as possible, I appreciate that.
Excellent.
CSS is great.
What did you think of the stream?
It was good. I wish I could have paid closer attention. I've been working on a little behind on some technical writing assignments. I've been trying to go back to school finally for computer engineering, but it's awesome. It echoed. It was kind of a continuation of some of your earlier streams, right? With the because a lot of you brought up before the psychedelics and how they might be a shortcut, but maybe not a good shortcut to a certain realm, you know. And I find that discussion fascinating.
Well, thank you. I mean,
I don't know if I have too much to add.
No, that is completely fine. And by the way, DMT Quest is jumping on the app right now, so it's all good. I really do think that it's very stupid for Twitter not to allow people to use the desktop app to do the same thing. It would make everything so much easier. I'm using an emulator to stream this, obviously, but Instagram, for those who do not know, I let Gio know about this. Gio, are you utilizing the information that I bestowed upon you now with Instagram?
Oh yeah, you can post from your desktop now.
That's right.
Crazy.
It's amazing. I mean, you could actually have done that before, because if you integrate Facebook Business with your Instagram account, you can even schedule Instagram posts, which is just mind-blowing to me. But anyway, DMT Quest is coming in right now, and let's see who else we have over here. Gio, only the people that you trust. Who are the people that you trust that we can bring in here into this conversation right now? And I'm not sure who exactly is.
Let's see. Hatcher, Beige Rage.
Oh, we got Colin over here who is a speaker. So Colin, go for it.
Just remember, we're being live streamed to YouTube, so don't say any kind of Fed posting.
No.
Although we were doing our fair share of Fed posting today with the ape theory, but
No, nothing like that. Lev, I have to say, I'm not super familiar with the stream. My being on today is actually because of Owen Cyclops. We communicated back in like 2018. I thought that he had genuinely one of my favorite posts on this horrible website, but it was essentially something in regards. I was working in education at the time, specifically as like an outdoor educator, so getting kids outside. And he had this really like present post about how kids really latch on to, I think, outdoor spaces, and particularly like people that lead them in outdoor spaces. And we sort of discussed the different things that we do to keep kids engaged in those outdoor spaces. And he shared with me an anecdote of how he used to talk essentially about like Egyptian theology and Egyptian iconography and things like that with kids who, I mean, I'm sure like in the grander sense probably had no idea what he was talking about, but I felt very drawn to that in the sense that I'm sure that those students probably took a lot away from that. And there was something about following his page a little bit more deeply that actually led me to, I was living in upstate New York at the time, and I connected with a group of sort of like a gentleman's club that was based out of a Greek Orthodox church, and not like a gentleman's club in the more like, let's say adult sense, but just genuinely a bunch of Greek guys that like to hang out, and went on a truffle hunt with them. And these guys are all in like, I mean, they're like older guys, but went on a truffle hunt, didn't find any truffles, but I mean, they were talking about psychedelics and smoking hashish back in Greece when they were kids. And it was this incredible experience that I actually felt very much so like I needed to thank Owen Cyclops for that, because it was I don't think I would have done that if it hadn't been, first off, for our conversation about certainly the importance of getting youth out into the environment and kind of taking them to
Make
that.
sure
But
the
also,
volume's on.
you know, again, following his page more sincerely. So thank you, Owen.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that. That's really cool. You know, it's funny, like, for me, I'm just kind of like broadcasting out into the void. It feels like it's no different if like 1 million people are listening or one. So it's always cool getting like feedback from people. That actually, the thing is, that was my goal. I was like, I'm going to get that guy to my Greek friends who used to smoke hashish back in Greece when they were kids. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
But no, man, that's really awesome, man. Yeah, it's kind of funny how the whole internet thing works. It kind of fits with the spiritual stuff we were talking about. Like, you know, someone mentioned something to me 10 years ago, and then 10 years later it like pops off in this weird way. Like, it is kind of a strange indirect action web that we all participate in.
Yeah, and I live and work in Austin, Texas now, and the property that I work at, I won't name directly, but is a pretty high-end like resort and spa based in like wellness and spirituality. So there are a lot of facilitators that I work with that do, you know, some of them are kind of in on the joke and then others are not, but you know, you have some that do like tarot card readings and clairvoyance and stuff like that. And again, I think that there are some that are a little kind of up their own rear ends about it. Like they don't they take themselves a little too seriously, but then the ones that don't, the ones that are able to just like really get into the groove and whatever, you know, maybe it's whether they actually think they're reading your mind or talking to the spirits is aside. You know, that's for you know, whatever one's, you know, personal spiritual beliefs are. But when someone's really able to just like riff with you about like what the spirits may or may not be sharing, I think also kind of fits into your vibe. And I happen to work as the outdoor adventure specialist, so I do mostly the rock climbing and kayaking, paddleboarding, stuff like that. But every once in a while we get the chance to touch base with one of the clairvoyants or the resident psychic that we have. You really get to pick up a lot of cool stuff. Really a great place to work. And
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, speaking broadly, I do genuinely appreciate, I think your page has brought a lot of that to the forefront of my mind and has certainly given me some interesting talking points.
Excellent.
Cool,
And by the
man.
way,
That's great.
we finally got DMT Quest to be able to speak. So DMT Quest, let us know. And by the way, I also want to say, Colin, thank you very much for that. I really appreciated that, and it is very important to go outside and touch grass, as the kids say
Oh, and I
today.
have something to ask Owen
Can
Cyclops later.
I just finish with one thing?
Sure.
Yeah, and genuinely, I'm new to the stream, and King Salmon, I think your story was very interesting. Seems like you really know what you're talking about, and a very fascinating guy. Please don't take this personally, but I think that the term Karen just signifies being terminally online, and I think that it's just like it's a really weird word that I think signifies like bad energy. Listen, whether or not a woman is having an episode or even just like what have you, I do think that it's important for us to, especially as people that are older, create a better example for younger men. I think Karen just signifies being terminally online and unfortunately gives off big incel energy, which is unfortunate. Again, no disrespect to you. I'm sure that you.
All right. Another term, by the way.
We're the number one incel podcast, actually.
No, by the way, another term that it's like.
For the most part, Karen is not the greatest meme, but I do reserve the right to say literally anything because I feel like if I repress the option to say anything, then it becomes a problem. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shit meme.
The classic word was busybodies, right? Like in general, just somebody who becomes like a nosy neighbor. These things have appeared throughout time, you know, in various contexts.
Yeah,
that was even older.
I prefer PMC, professional managerial class, just the most miserable, fluorescent stained people of all time. It's unfortunate what staying inside under fluorescent light does to your brain. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, people should have like
Anyways, Lev,
Yes.
I'm going to mute myself so others can have the floor, but thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Colin. All right, so DMT Quest, you got those headphones on, you're ready to go. Let us know what your thoughts are on the stream that we just had and are still in a way continuing, because this is still part of the actual stream.
For people
I
who
like
don't know,
it.
I'm also kind of a co-host, but whatever.
Yeah, and I
Lev
thought it was good
kayfabe's the
to.
fact.
I thought it was good to bring in just completely different perspectives in terms of, I guess, the discussion around psychedelics that's much needed. I really didn't know what Owen's perspective is in general, to be quite honest. I don't know if he's like really deep into, I guess, a specific religion or what it is, but I guess it would have helped. Maybe I should have done some more homework in terms of where his background was coming from. But yeah, I thought it was a good discussion.
Would there be anything that you would say, since right now Gnostic Informant is not here, if you were to channel Gnostic Informant's energy in a certain way and kind of push back, even though I don't know how long Owen can stay here, but kind of push back against some of the things that Owen was talking about in relation to not even the concerns about psychedelics, but more about the quest for knowledge or gnosis or whatever you want to call it versus abiding by a certain established tradition. Like, and you don't even have to push back, but just like where is your stance on that particular issue?
I think we should allow people to explore. I think, that should be encouraged. I don't think it should be shoved down people's throats in terms of psychedelics is the only way, because there's a lot of different ways to, touch the spiritual realm, I suppose. But yeah, I think that exploration is a must, especially in 2021. We can share ideas, share experiences with each other. I think that's really what's been lacking for, I guess, decades past or centuries past, is the ability to connect with people of different religions, different races, different everything. And maybe we're starting to have an overlap in terms of spiritual experiences that in some cases might not have anything to do with religion, right? People from different religions having mystical experiences and having questions and being able to connect with others. I think that's very key. Psychedelics play a role in that. Is it the only thing? Absolutely not. We are psychedelics. We're oozing psychedelics. Some of us are oozing more psychedelics than others endogenously. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
And for those who don't know, by the way, when you say endogenously, you did the amazing documentary called DMT Quest, retweeted by the great Joe Rogan, as well as writing the books Question for the Lion Tamer, parts 1 and 2. I highly recommend everybody check them out. They are in the description of the video that you could find, again, on breaktherules.tv. But anyway, the one issue that I would have with that, and this may be something, I don't want to speak for Owen or the other people here, so I'm curious, Owen, if you would agree on this, but I think the issue that a lot of people, let's say on the more religious, there's like some spoon clanking going on. That's probably a note to Styx, Hexenhammer 666, who we are going to have with us on January the 11th. But anyway, would you say that the feeling is a lot of people are kind of raised by wolves, more or less? Like they're not raised with a kind of structure that it would enable them to make the right decisions. So when they're not raised in that kind of structure, when they just do go off and do their own thing, and why can't you let people enjoy things, yada yada yada, when they're in that mode, they could possibly make a lot of bad decisions, and there's not going to be any grounded structure for them to fall back on today, and they may be seduced by some silver-tongued whoever, and that's going to be a big issue. So, Owen, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, totally. I don't think there's anything that you said that's totally, off the walls or like way too out there. It's kind of like I still started, like, if we met at a party, like the tone of the conversation would obviously be like totally different. But yeah, man, I mean, for me, I definitely agree in a sense. Honestly, I'm really trying to figure out what the role of like the individual versus tradition versus like authority and individual judgment and how it all fits together. So that's something that I'm like really working on and trying to figure out. It's not like I heard what you said and was like, oh my God, this guy's nuts. Yeah,
but it's
I definitely
it's
think
really
that's a-
weird for
that's a
me though why
factor for sure.
it happens a couple of times. There are some people in the chat who say like, Lev, once again you're misinterpreting our views, like when I'm talking about like more of the orthodox people, and I'm not. I'm really trying to be as charitable as I can to the idea that there are going to be certain precepts out there that people want to lean on and follow, and I don't see there being anything wrong there. However, I still lean on there being something to the idea of acquiring actual knowledge, acquiring actual wisdom over time. And I do agree with you, Owen, that I think that there is this objective spiritual truth that people can get to. And I see a lot of organized religions as containing certain things to get people there. But one of my biggest concerns has been, especially if we're talking about the much more rigid religious structures, the concern is somebody doing something good because they actually feel like if they were to do the opposite, that inside they would feel the pain of whatever they would cause a person? Or are they doing good and have been conditioned to do this good just because they know that if they don't do good, either they're going to go to hell, or in certain countries today, they'll get their arms chopped off or something? You know, like, that's what comes to my mind when it comes to how do we judge a person to be a good person? How do we judge them to actually climb up the ladder of spiritual understanding as opposed to just being an automaton that's been taught to do A, B, and C, otherwise they're going to feel pain?
I think this brings up a good point, because the whole thing is about these chemicals, right? These, I guess, drugs, if you want to call them that. So you can take I mean, there's other things you can do, like shamanic pain rituals and meditation and all kinds of stuff. But my point was basically like this kind of gets into addiction, interestingly, because you can make yourself feel good. You know what I mean? And that's not necessarily the singular indicator of moral right and wrong. But I guess over a long period of time, yeah, if you're in the throes of addiction, you can definitely identify that you don't particularly feel in a state of absolute bliss and satisfaction, because you are kind of at odds with objective reality to a pretty good extent.
Well, that would
But
be...
it is very
yeah.
interesting, though, how we're equating, like, as soon as we talk about psychedelia, the question of morality comes up. But, well, I wanted to get to Zeta. You had your hand up. But also, before that, I just want to ask Owen a quick question. It seems that over the years, you've sort of transitioned more towards contemplating on the work of art and contemplating on various religious themes. And you don't tend to, like, get as political as you were back in, like, I remember first time I think it was like the content Emmys. That was like 2016. It seems
Yeah,
that
dude.
have you sort of changed like your opinion on various identitarian issues, or do you think that politics is just like a losing game? Because it seems that you're much more mature, not mature, but like you are more, I think, focused on these questions that are sort of transcend the political. I mean, to sort of like, I know I'm like kind of sucking your dick a bit, but you know what I mean.
No, dude. Yeah, man. I mean, to keep it short. Well, one thing that's kind of like at the front of that answer is that what I do, I don't necessarily think everyone else should do. That kind of sounds like it goes without saying, but a lot of times when people are talking about, you know, what level they should be involved in like direct politics, or if it's dumb to focus on X, Y, and Z, it kind of sounds like I'm saying, oh, well, if you don't do this, you know, you're kind of being misled. It's not what I think. There are some people where their vibe like really is about engaging directly with the political, and that's what we do, and we kind of like need them to do that. For me, it just kind of drifted more and more back towards my home base of art and spirituality. That's really what I'm not only the most comfortable talking about, but it really is how I see things at the base level. So there was that natural kind of proclivity, but also I think that in terms of being efficacious and me focusing on what I could do, it's almost like those two things merge together. So if I'm really sitting at my desk and I'm like, you know, I want to change things, I don't really like how things are going, it's almost like the best thing I could do is make art, get people to think, you know, should I be watching porn? Should I be doing drugs? Maybe not DMT, but should I be doing like weed? And I smoke weed every day. That's crazy. I never thought about it. Like, should I, like, what are my goals, you know? And it's not like I have those answers, but I felt like focusing on the art and spirituality was just the obvious route, both towards playing to my strengths, but also making any kind of efficacious change. Like, I don't really like talking about it too much, but I do get people DMing me being like, you know, I was looking at your art and it made me think about X, Y, and Z, and now I'm like going to church, or now I'm, you know, doing this thing. And like, I just felt like it was my strength. Let's put it that way. It was how I could play to my strength and best play my cards. I view myself as like a little pawn on the chessboard. It's kind of the best way to say it.
Did you feel like you had to sort of escape certain like hyper-political groups that were quite popular at the time? Like, I know people, they view you as part of like Frog Twitter, but also like specifically with the identitarian stuff, do you feel like you drifted away for a reason, or do you still like, or do you think it's like that wasn't your vibe, that wasn't your thing?
I wouldn't say it that way. I think that with a lot of the political stuff, I started to really dislike how just stepping into the conversation, you're kind of forced to identify with the caricature of what the other person already thinks, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I noticed
you have
that,
to be a heel.
I noticed that while at first I really liked that, I eventually realized that it was not doing what I wanted it to, and that it would be better for me to go kind of the more circuitous route that I just described. So it's like when you enter, let's say, take something really tame, I don't know, like gun control. It's like if you enter a gun control conversation, you kind of have to be like, well, I'm the pro-gun control guy, or I'm the anti-gun control guy, and then you have to spend your whole time sort of unpacking these like myths and caricatures about you, which is good for some people. That's like what they're really good at and maybe what they were supposed to do. But for me, yeah, like I said, I just felt like it played more to my strengths to go around it. And also, just to maybe give a more interesting answer shortly, I started to feel like a lot of things were more, not that I changed what I think about anything, but I realized the way people were coming to the table were kind of conditional on their direct situation, in a way that me just kind of grabbing the megaphone and telling them what to think, it just made that not really the move for me. Yeah.
That's great, actually.
Can I jump in with a comment?
Really quickly, then we got to get to Zeta because he's had his hand up. But yeah, Colin, go ahead.
Well, sort of just going off of what Owen was just saying, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and of course named after Christopher Columbus. And for decades, there was a large brass statue in front of the city hall. It's the state capitol, but it was in front of City Hall that was, of course, to Christopher Columbus. And for, I mean, decades, since like the 60s, local Native American groups, indigenous peoples, had been arguing and rallying and protesting against it. And I mean, I hate to reference The Sopranos in such a direct sense, but of course, if you're familiar with the show, there is that great episode where they go and face off with indigenous peoples about Christopher Columbus Day. And I actually found myself, I had a great deal of pride in where I grew up, and found myself certainly passionate about the statue and about the city's name and the effigy of which it was named for, you know, the person. I never grew up, I was not a very religious person growing up, but that was something I was very passionate about, very political. Well, having moved to Austin, I actually have a coworker now. Certainly won't say her name, but she's a indigenous person, very much involved with her tribe. I work with her every day. Really a very, very special person who's, of course, done peyote, mescaline, you know, has herself engaged in, you know, experimentation with psychedelics. And for her, I mean, I've certainly have never, I think she might be the most politically apolitical person I've ever met, because her beliefs are not based in something as silly as like city pride, but based on religious or spiritual beliefs that date back for thousands of years. And I have been truly moved by that, because again, truly the most politically apolitical person, like, has the things that she believes in, but doesn't ever feel the need to put on a facade about it, or certainly to play a part. It's just her part.
Yeah.
It's what she believes. And again, I another thing, this is like 2018 Owen Cyclops, but you had picked up like an old school like Gutenberg press, or like some sort of like small printing press, like a handheld printing press. But anyways, I think about that a lot with certain people that I meet, and it's like every word that she says is like so meticulously typed out on like a printing press. It's just this thought that could not come from any other experience. And her, I think, religious and spiritual presence is probably the most like secondhand religious I've ever been. And I think that again, coming from an experience or a childhood experience of being surrounded with what I thought was an indigenous culture of resentment or dislike of my people. And certainly there are, I would imagine, more radical indigenous rights activists that would deny my existence, or I don't mean to be too political here, but to be confronted with someone who that's not her, it's not her point of view, it's her reality, the reality of being an indigenous person in what she calls the land we now call Texas, is very moving, and I think very powerful to, again, that idea of where do spiritual beliefs come from? Is it subjective, objective? Is it personal or community based? Because I have been invited on many occasions to attend powwows for her tribe and group ceremonies. Haven't had the chance to go yet, but it's not a question of pomp and circumstance. It's a question for her of, if she doesn't, then her traditions die. It's not as if I'm going to go to, the store and, Stetsons and start putting feathers in my cap and get a traditional headdress. But even the ideas of verbally or socially communicating what their tribal traditions are, keep them alive and keep them at least in someone's brain. I think it goes back to, the idea that, when you truly die is when the last person says your name, which I think for her is much bigger than some dumb statue in downtown Columbus, Ohio.
That's very powerful and
very,
well said.
very good.
Yes. But it does come to the question of
Zeta,
whether...
you have been waiting for...
It does... okay, we're going to get to Zeta. Gio, do you know who Zeta is?
I think
no,
a few
but
people know me.
Seems like a nice guy.
I actually
All
have a
right.
question for Gio.
Go for it.
Well, first of all, I don't really know much about
Yeah, go ahead.
psychedelics. All I know is that it's definitely a sin, and it makes you see demons, so I'm against that personally. But my real question for Gio, I'm Zoomer Theosis, and I wanted to ask you why you, as a Christian, thought it was okay to slander me and call me a porn addict on a live stream with Jonathan Pajot. Why'd you think that was okay?
Oh, is this actually Zoomer Theosis?
Yeah,
I didn't call you a porn addict, by the way.
Yeah, you did. I can. Play
Well,
it right
I don't
now.
know. You had a
I
lot
have
of
it right here.
suspicious
Is this not your
takes.
voice?
I
Is this
mean,
not you? Is this not you, Shane, calling me a porn addict?
Your porn addiction.
That's you talking
Well,
about.
I mean, maybe I was
I'm
being
looking at you right now. I'm
maybe
literally
I was
looking at
being
your face.
hyperbolic.
You're being hyperbolic. You said I was a porn addict. I don't watch porn.
Well, I don't know. Did you have takes about lusting after your sister? Did you have those
No, I
takes
didn't
on
say
Twitter?
that. I said that you shouldn't do something with your girlfriend that you wouldn't do with your sister because before you're married, she is your sister in Christ. That's what I said. So now you
okay,
just
let me
keep on
ask you
slandering
then.
me.
Why do
don't
you
just
feel?
apologize?
Why do you feel that?
Why don't you just apologize?
Well, why do you feel that
Well, why don't
you're
you just
making
apologize?
takes that are kind of suspicious theologically?
How is that
where,
suspicious?
Well, if I've slandered, well, I mean, to say that you can't look at your wife in the nude, I mean, that's kind of.
What I
don't know,
said
bro.
was, I said that nudity can be harmful even if it's your spouse, and I was talking about gawking at your wife nude because you can still lust after someone even after you're married. Lust doesn't end at marriage. And I said it was about religious art. The whole conversation was about religious art, but you took that to me, oh, this guy is a convert. I'm Greek.
Oh, yes, the take that all art with nudity is not real art, right?
What does that do with
your
porn?
buddy?
Well, hold on.
I don't know. You think that all art with nudity is pornography? I don't know.
I didn't say
That's
that.
kind of a
I said,
strange
I
take.
said not all nudity is pornography, but looking at nudity can be harmful. Those are my exact words. So not only did you misquote
You
me,
said
but
all
slandered
instances
yourself.
of looking at
I
nudity
want an
are
apology.
harmful.
You're a Christian. I'm asking you to apologize to me, Christian to Christian. I will be willing to forgive you if you apologize to me.
Okay, listen. Now that you've come, I will apologize if I have mischaracterized your words. So I'm sorry for doing that. But I do think that some of your takes are borderline, not I don't agree with. But if I have slandered you, then I will be a man about it. I'm very sorry, Zoomer Theosis.
I completely forgive you.
I mean,
and
that was just.
I understand the criticism, and I apologize. I apologize to you if I came off, very aggressive, if I came off mean. But it's I still lurk a little bit, and I look at, search up Zoomer Theosis. Everybody's calling me this stuff, and it's like, need you say it in front of Jonathan Joe? That's why I wanted to ask you for an apology, but I forgive you.
Listen, I think I listen. I will agree now that I've thought about it for a few weeks. Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up, and next time we have Jonathan on, maybe I will correct the. I will. I no. I not maybe. I will correct the record. I think that you were man enough to come here and confront me, and for that I do give my sincere as a Christian. I am a Catholic, but I do have a deep. I actually, like I've said, I've contemplated actually converting, but I mean, I really can't, I have very family and, cultural issues with that. But I have a deep love and respect for Orthodoxy. And I feel sorry if I have slandered you. And maybe I will even make a tweet publicly saying yeah.
All right, Gio. Before we go any further, I
Sorry,
want to make
I
sure
know.
we keep on the conversation here, the main one of
Go ahead, Lev.
psychedelics. But this was an interesting aside. I would like to know more about Zoomer Theosis later on, but I do want to go quickly to DMT Quest because I know you have to go.
Okay,
So
thanks, guys. I'm
DMT.
gonna hop off. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much for the kind words.
No problem,
And I
dude.
apologize if I came off offensive.
No
or
problem. No
disrespectful.
problem.
That
All
was
right,
a
so
beautiful
D-
moment. I'm glad I was here for that.
Yes. So DMT Quest. Any final thoughts from, well, I guess this conversation as well? Anything that's been said right now before you go? Any wishes you want to spread?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to all the Christians and all the Catholics out there. I mean, I think we can have these conversations and still be respectful. And I have a deep amount of respect for all religions, even though I'm not religious myself. And obviously, we're delving into the endogenous DMT research. I feel it's almost a way to validate some of the mysticism behind these religions. And I think, excuse me, that's one of the most intriguing aspects of this entire project going forward, at least for me, is that people would start to look at life in a magical way and maybe start to open their minds to the fact that some of these religions, not only did they have these supernormal abilities, but maybe there was some to go along with the teachings as well. Maybe it was intertwined, the supernatural abilities and the teachings that came along with it and the insights. So, yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
Absolutely, it is an exciting time. And by the way, we have Jerry Lee, who is not a speaker, but if you are interested in speaking, you seem to be very different from this particular world. And what Break the Rules likes to do, it likes to bring people together who otherwise would never have a chance to speak. So let me know if you want to add anything to the conversation. I am more than happy to welcome you on board over here. But we got Law Without, who is this? Law Without the Sea. Once again, Gio, do you know?
Can I ask a question to the Catholics in the room?
Sure.
Sure. I as someone unfamiliar with Catholicism, but I do find the ceremonial aspect to be enticing and very beautiful and moving. A sincere question, sincerely. Do you fear Christ, or do you love him, or do you respect how much you love him because you fear him? This is actually a question I've been curious about for a long time. Thank you.
I am not Catholic, but I will start the answer if anyone else wants to chime in. I'm going to bounce in like 5'10", so if anyone is dying to tell me that I'm like an idiot and argue with me, please make yourself known because I'm totally down. But anyway, as for your question, fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, right? I think that is like a really interesting thing that pits like the biblical worldview against a lot of other worldviews. So I'm not Catholic, but I thought since no one was answering, I would kind of throw that out there. I think that is something that makes a worldview rooted in the Bible interesting because it says not only is it a factor, it's kind of like the starting point to fear God.
Can you repeat your question? I was typing out a tweet.
Essentially,
I'm
the
Catholic
question is
myself.
Yes, and I was actually, Gio, I was looking for your answer in specific because, of course, you had mentioned previously that you're Catholic. And again, genuine question here. Do you fear Christ, or do you love how much you fear him? I understand that's a complicated question, but I trust in my heart that I think you know what I mean.
I think that, and I want to get to a follower of mine, Lawless, Law Without C. I think fear, it almost goes back to Kierkegaard, right? Fear and trembling. I think that to fear Christ is you fear what life would be like without the light of Christ. Now, as a Catholic and an artist, I take it very seriously because I believe that as an artist, the mission of life should be to honor that which has given you life, which is the light of Christ. And I think that fear is a healthy metric
from which you can guide yourself and your own being towards correct, not just correct behavior or belief, but also to make yourself attune with that which gives you the most amount of flourishing, which is the lessons that are given to us by Christ. So I think fear is pretty much, I mean, I know there's rightfully it's a stereotype about the guilt and Catholic thing, but I mean, that's there for a reason, because it is true. A lot of Catholic cultures, especially us Italians and Irish and so forth, guilt is sort of, in an ancient sense, a healthy corrective. You are not just guilty out of sort of a baseless fear, like a very primitive, like monkey brain, like I fear this judgment. It should be something deeper that instantiates within you the lessons of Christ. And that's at least I view it. I think that it's very simplistic when people say that, well, Christianity, you're just avoiding hell, right? I mean, yeah, hell is a reality, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's to find that which is more, how shall I say this? It is to find what is eternally alive, which is, our faith and what Christ has given to us. It's not necessarily to view fear and trembling in that, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell. That's too, that's.
But Gio, that's the big question. That's the big question for me. Like, how exactly would you go from one to the other? What is the transitionary point between somebody practicing because they're afraid of the lake of fire versus somebody getting to the level where, like I said before, when you hurt somebody, where you do wrong to somebody, you would actually feel inside that feeling of doing wrong to somebody, and that would be your own personal hell, if you will.
I would like to answer this question. I'm a Christian.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I would actually like to build a bunch of different bridges between things, so it might take a couple seconds. But there's a song by Eden called Babel, and it kind of opens with one of these dubbed-in clips, and it says, something along like, we don't fear the darkness. What we actually fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. We fear our own light, basically. And because this is a conversation about psychedelics, I would actually like to take it back to that and how I've arrived at this. So this whole idea of ego dissolution, that goes back to Terence McKenna. And then Alan Watts talks about this internal simulation. Your sense organs basically take in information, and you have this internal simulation that can be more or less coherent with reality. So fear, neurobiologically, somewhat is a signal to your conscious mind that something that you love is in danger, and anger is kind of like a motivational force to kill whatever that problem is, whether that's an incredibly abstract or a very, physical, literal, like fighting a bear or something. So this is kind of like a spiritual, emotional intelligence that I'm not the master of here, but it's like actually these things that we generally put a negative connotation on, with a lot of exploration, you can see the good in them. And so my take is that I started out as an agnostic, and then I learned that evil was definitely real. And that led me to God, because I had already been given the gift of like love in my life. So it naturally led there. And so I kind of see Jesus as this perfect, good ideal, which is basically a judge. And that gets into Revelations. And, he's going to bring the sword, basically. He's going to bring division. And so it's strangely not so much the devil that I'm worried about. It is living up to this gift, this ideal, perfect good, and striving towards that. And I'm afraid of my own power, in a sense, to choose and fuck that up, because I will. You know what I mean? And so, like, Jesus in Christian belief is like the deciding factor. I mean, none of your works matter without Jesus. It's like once you have Jesus in the equation, good, and then do charity and do good works and stuff, and try and live up to that judging, beautiful, beyond comprehension good ideal that is judging you and like is putting real stress and pressure on your choices. And so that's why I'm like agreeing with Owen so much, is because I realized there are things that are really, really, really bad. And I've experienced a lot of it. And even though I have this internal simulation, like if I wanted to steel man Gnostic Informant, life is an unproven theory. You know what I mean? Like just everything, your bad feelings, unproven theory. It's all just a conspiracy theory. Could be the demiurge, could be whatever. But there's this thing with love that just kind of breaks all of that, where it's like, I don't actually feel that I need to know. This is my experience. It is existential, not so much, it's like the deepest layer of my consciousness has a set of variables that can shift around, like psychedelics, like Terrence McKenna talks about, kind of just alter the contents of your consciousness. But there's this deep thing underneath that's like what I've been trying to get at this whole time. And that is the judge. And that is the thing that has honestly dragged me through the hardest times in my entire life. So, I mean, I just believe as much as I can.
Yeah. And King Salmon, going off of that, and again, keeping it in terms of psychedelics, what a beautiful thing you just said. I truly agree and both recognize that. And I can share from personal experience, my really only like deep dive into psychedelics was an experience with salvia, where I entered into a new dimension, and it horrified me. It I mean, to this day, what a horrifying experience. And in that fear, I think that I found a love for consciousness and a certain love for being sober. I mean, like I longed for being sober. I can even remember, like, quite specifically, being just absolutely messed up on salvia, sitting in a Jeep, my friend Max's Jeep, and just longing for being sober. So in fear, I found a love, and I a love that was very passionate, a love for not being there, a love for being grounded and sober. And I think that what you said really rings true again in the question of whether you love or fear, whatever godly intimate you might believe in. But in your fear of that creation or that creator, you love what you would lack without it, or you love what you have with it. You fear what you would have without it. You fear the loss that you would have without him, her, what have you, and love what you have with them. So certainly my own, again, foray into psychedelics, I feared what I was experiencing and longed, if not loved, the feeling of being sober. It was a truly grounding and truly something I'll never forget. Boy, do I not! I do not look back on that fondly.
I am also sober, and I wanted to say one more thing, but I don't want to take up all the airspace. So Dante's Inferno is quite interesting because the lowest layer of hell is cold, and it is like the furthest distance from God. But at the bottom of that hell is a doorway out, because it's like when you reach that furthest point, you realize that even that is not beyond God's reach, and so it's kind of like this weird metaphorical, spiritual, symbolic thing where like the devil has always had a doorway straight to God right next to him, and like it's just kind of funny that this whole thing always like at the furthest point you're like, oh, I suddenly realize, like I suddenly get it.
Well, that also reminds me of a. Oh, sorry.
Goofy. It's such a goofy, metaphor that I'm sure we're all familiar with. But the darkness is simply the absence of light, which I feel almost silly, if not sententious, saying that. But I think that rings true in that, and that the deeper you go into the darkness, the more you love and appreciate the light. And speaking as someone who I think the last time I smoked cannabis was like a year ago, and I couldn't talk, I couldn't move. I mean, I just felt horrible. It was a horrifying feeling. And again, that made me appreciate, if not long, again, more for the presence of being not high. Now, this is coming from someone that I love having a beer. Beer is cool. Love having a beer. Keep it pretty simple, but I'm by no means sober, is what I mean to say. But again, the presence of that certainly struck me as quite a the absence again of being sober makes you long for that moment.
Have you guys looked at, by the
real
way,
quick,
yes.
real quick, I'm gonna have to bounce out. I realized whoever I lead after, it was gonna make it sound like I was being rude to them, but I gotta bounce out and do baby stuff.
Well, Owen, thank you so much for coming
this
in. Guys,
was-
buy Owen's book.
God bless you, my friend.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hanging out with everyone, and I'll
and
catch you guys later.
So
Thanks,
I want
man.
to
Yo,
take a...
One thing really quick. I will say one thing before I leave, just to end on like an interesting note, in case anyone was like waiting for me to talk. Not that they were, but one thing we didn't hit on just super quick is that the Gnostic Informant guy mentioned that you have these religions and they're merging and developing. One thing I just want to throw out there, because it took me a long time to even consider this as an option, but we assume that those are progressions, but it's also possible that those are degradations. I'm kind of toying around with the idea. I don't actually know if it's true, but like religion generally starts with some kind of revelation, and then over time, maybe it degrades more than it progresses. It's kind of interesting working backwards through time. I don't know if that's true, but I thought I'd just end with an interesting idea. Anyway, check out my book. It's on Amazon. I'm chilling is the last thing I do, and I'm leaving.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. It was
Thank
really
you,
fun, by the way.
Owen.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much for coming in. So one of the
I
things
agree
that...
with him. It's true. Like religions will degrade over time.
Well,
I mean,
some will degrade, some will upgrade.
Well,
I mean, it's a strange thing, though, Gio, to think that things only go in one trajectory. I think some things evolve, some things devolve over time. Things take different directions. Maybe with the cycles of history, you can have times when it's great and times when it goes back to being this Stone Age, and then things have to arise again. But then there is also a question of, is there a cycle within the cycle? So, for example, maybe these whole cycles of civilizations rising up and then cataclysms occurring and us having to start again, if this is something that, let's say with the Graham Hancock hypothesis, this is something that happens all the time, then maybe there is some kind of a cycle within the cycle, some trajectory that we're going towards, where every time like a child touches a hot stove and it burns his hand, maybe collectively this is something that's happening with people, where we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and maybe there is a need for people to start understanding that when you hurt somebody, it is like you're hurting yourself. So maybe there is some kind of lesson that if we don't learn it, then the Etch-a-Sketch board just kind of shakes and we got to start over again. Who knows, then the meteor comes and whatever. But we do have more people here right now. So we have Carter. Now, Carter, I'm going to trust you. I've never met you before, but I've looked through your Twitter. I saw this nice picture with your cat. So I am going to take a Hail Mary. I'm going to trust you on this one. Don't fail me. Carter, what do you got to say here? I'm going to invite you to, speak.
So my first name is Riley. Carter is my middle name, just for clarification. But anyway, yeah, I just joined this room and I heard you guys talking about Gnosticism and psychedelics and just spirit and large questions about consciousness, and this stuff just really fascinates me. So I have kind of an interesting perspective on this. I've done a lot of psychedelics. I've done mushrooms and acid and all those things. Never done DMT. And yeah, I've been asking some big questions about Gnosticism and Christianity. I just became a Christian recently, and the reason I became a Christian is I actually went through a deliverance. So it was like an exorcism from generational demons and curses that I inherited from my childhood. So the adverse experiences of my childhood were the result of generational bloodline curses in my family. And so I saw a deliverance minister, and she delivered me from all these demons. And one of the major demons was a curse that I inherited from my granddad, who was a third-degree master Mason, and he was also involved in the Scottish Rite. So he was a Freemason. And I was actually doing some reading today about Freemasonry and the conflict between Catholics and Freemasons, because I just went through a breakup with my girlfriend who was a Catholic, and I think that it was interesting to me because I was reading about how the Templars are connected to Masons. Historically, the Templars were what led to Freemasonry, going all the way back to Solomon and that stuff. And that goes all the way back to Gnosticism, which is long considered to be a heresy of Christianity, because it, talks about the demiurge, the idea of the human spirit being trapped in this sort of like prison matrix, and the demiurge being the devil. And the greatest trick was that he was Yahweh of the Old Testament. So just a lot of stuff to think about. Freemasonry is just fascinating to me because of they supposedly worship the Grand Architect, which is the all-seeing eye, which is considered by Catholics and true Christians to be Lucifer or the devil, and that cursed me because my granddad was a Mason, and now that I'm a Christian, I renounced all that stuff. But yet I still find myself being really fascinated by Gnostic thought. And the G in the Masonic label actually stands for Gnosis or God, or
it may also stand for the number 7 in the gematria. So G being the 7th letter, and the number 7 is considered to be the number of perfection.
Yeah. Interesting. And there's also 7 chakras and
exactly,
7 sins. 7 is an interesting number for sure. I see 777s often, like on YouTube. I see like YouTubers that have like the 777. So yeah, I'm kind of jumping around a lot. But I think this topic, just talking about the demiurge, psychedelics are something like, I just quit smoking weed, and I'm staying away from psychedelics now because like I see them as kind of like something that is kind of, I guess you are kind of you're kind of opening Pandora's box, I think, when it comes to psychedelics. And with great wisdom also comes great vexation. And so maybe being a true Christian and following the living God, following Jesus, is in many ways like taking the blue pill, but ignorance is bliss. And if you are to take the red pill and you are to try psychedelics and you are to go deeper into the maze,
I don't think those are the only two ways.
Yeah,
though.
you can OD on red pills to the point where the red pill becomes a suppository.
Well, look at all the Q boomers. But
I'm sorry.
Oh wait.
It's showing up as Carter, but remind me your first name.
My first name's Riley. My full name is Riley Carter Bloom.
Riley, I'm curious to know, do you think that the feeling of generational sin or generational curse, as I think you had put it, came before or after your intro to psychedelics?
So I think that I personally decided to try psychedelics, and that was my own personal decision. But I think that the things that affected me as a child is what ultimately led me to recreational drug use as a form of escapism, right? To escape these deep feelings and these deep traumas that I wanted to avoid. But yeah, I think like avoiding that stuff, and I think psychedelics in a way helped me cope with that stuff. But the only one that I found brought me closer to the light and closer to God was psilocybin, and LSD was one that kind of almost did the opposite. It almost put me back in touch with the Matrix. I think like LSD has this sort of matrixy quality to it, and then psilocybin is more in tune.
Big.
If you're going to do one, then do psilocybin. I mean, that's probably the most natural in terms of integration of the human experience with these contacts with drugs. I mean, Psilocybin apparently has been with us since the monkey days.
I've tried. For me, psilocybin, hand to God, never worked.
This whole entire thing reminds me of shout out to Ping Trip, if nobody knows who that is. His edits are hilarious, but it's just Joe Rogan like, hey man, you want to see demons? it's honestly some of the best edits ever. You know what? Honestly, it might not be a bad thing to literally travel into hell and see a bunch of demons. Like that might be useful.
Well, that's what Joey Diaz, the comedian Joey Diaz, said, that when he goes to the weed store, he tells them right off the bat, I want to see the devil. I can't do a good voice of Joey Diaz impression. If anybody here could do a good Joey Diaz impression, do it.
I want to see the devil.
Exactly.
Give me the devil stuff.
Yes, exactly. But to what Carter was talking about earlier, I think that this isn't a choice of either you take the red pill in the form of psychedelics or you take the blue pill in the form of just being ignorant to whatever's out there other than what you know. Somebody's got their mic on. I think it's Colin. So I think that there could be another way of going about this where you do acquire wisdom through, I don't know, like partly meditation, partly just being still and just gaining wisdom through whatever it is that you see, from not being attached so much to all the experiences that you have. I think that there is a change that can come about in the human mind when they do. See, I don't want to use the term upgrade their software because I think that's kind of bullshit. That's, again, this materialistic way of thinking about what exactly we are. But I think that there are still certain places we can go without psychedelics where we can look at the world a different way. And there is an interesting thing a Kabbalist once said, where the world that we perceive, we always imagine it being outside of us. Meanwhile, according to him, there is no outside. That everything is actually going on within you, and it is your relationship to what is going on within you that is what you have the ability to control. And the more you are able to change the way that works in such that you stop being as attached to the receiving nature and start giving more and start being in such a state that you do everything for the sake of others. And it doesn't mean that you start giving out candy, that you start, just letting everybody through the border or whatever. That's not the point. The point, you have to use your mind.
A Kabbalist said this?
A Kabbalist said this.
As in Jewish mysticism?
As in Jewish mysticism, yes.
Yeah, that must be why they're so anti-beauty and so anti-material.
Wait, hold on a second. First of all, the anti-beauty thing is complete bullshit. I can show you various examples of genius Jewish poets, artists, architects that have contributed to all the places that they were in. So this idea of Jewish anti-beauty is complete bullshit, in my opinion. Now, if we are talking about...
Just look at what
Moimeko Jones had a good video on this.
Look at what they've done to art.
No, what do you mean what they have done to art? Egon Schiele. Is Egon Schiele... Hold on. Is Egon Schiele, is he Jewish?
No, I don't believe so.
No, he's not. But so again, this whole...
I think the WVG I think the WVG here brings up an interesting query, if not a question. I mean, what makes you think that way? You say, look at what they've done to beauty, look at what they've done to art. Now, I must preface this by saying that I grew up in Reform Judaism. I consider myself unaffiliated at the time, but certainly the most lax Judaism as perhaps might be. But I'm curious to know your position on this a little bit more.
Just looking at how they've spearheaded lewdness into mainstream culture. And I bring up films, for example, because you can see the different executives and directors and producers that actually pushed for degeneracy in Hollywood, nudity in movies, etc., leading to pornography being created. And even you look at the guys behind MindGeek who own Pornhub and I think another pornography site.
All right. What about what about the Coen brothers?
This is true, but
hold up.
Jews have also been disproportionately involved in European classical music.
Yes.
Some of the greatest composers of the 19th and 20th century, like Felix Mendelssohn and Gustav Mahler and Arnold Schoenberg, were Jews, and they composed beautiful music. Although some would disagree with me on Schoenberg. But
no, but even with Hollywood, for example,
and I'm of Jewish background, and I compose, and I hope I compose beautiful work.
No, you
It's
compose
difficult
beautiful.
sometimes.
Well, let me.
No,
give
wait,
you,
wait. But hold on. This is gonna be my chance to also explain kind of like the repeat of what happened with the Sotomayor thing, and I'm gonna explain it as succinctly as possible, and then Gio, you could explain it as well. So when we're talking about Hollywood, even like forget even classical music, let's focus on Hollywood. You have things even today. You have the Coen brothers. You have various other Jewish directors that are not pushing a lot of this crap. Even back in like the golden age of Hollywood, you had, for example, Wizard. You know, the people who made like Wizard of Oz, and you had various examples of films that were in no way degenerate at all. Now, when you're talking about people who are very well educated, you're going to get people who are very well educated whose family culture praises and encourages studying. It does not encourage having some leader who talks about how, you know, they're not getting into top positions because they're being discriminated against. That's not the path that they went on. The path they went on is study, study, and study more. So when you in general have people who study, who value education, then they're going to appear both for good and for ill, and there's going to be way more of them in certain industries. But the question is, how much is that something inherent in them? Because I'll tell you, like, when it comes to just like this Harmonious Heretic said right now about classical composers, so many of them being incredibly talented who are Jewish, same thing for the chess players. If you look at the chess grandmasters, an incredible amount are Jewish. If you look at any other profession, you're just going to get an overwhelming amount of Jewish people who are going to be in there.
Yeah, but Lev, you're looking at specific things, though. I mean, this is what Michael Jones said. He said that when it comes specifically to visual art, I mean, film is different. We want to bracket it from visual art. He said that, you know, certain groups of people, certain haplogroups have different skills in terms of like their IQ. For example, us Italians, we have very high visual IQ in terms of visual art, in terms of like a recognition of like a more regal sense of beauty. Whereas like, you know, when it comes to verbal IQ, music we
wait, hold on, Gio. Isaac Levitan. Have you seen
certain cultures are still bad.
hold on, Isaac Levitan. Have you seen paintings by Isaac Levitan? Just to throw one example out here.
You're using one example, yeah, but that's like.
No, what I mean, this is the only one that comes to mind. Then there's also the architects. There's also the architects that I'm talking about. But my bigger point here,
Gio, some of my favorite artists are of your people, Lev.
Yes.
But I have a different view of art than like most.
Sure, but here's what I think is the thing that ends up getting missed in a lot of these conversations.
And I want to get rid of this because
Heretic.
Twitter is going to fucking ban us. So
I was trying to listen to Gio.
Excuse me?
I said I don't want to talk about the same word because Twitter's going to ban us. Oh, God.
I would like
I'm
to listen to
sorry I interrupted.
No, sorry, Phil. Go ahead, Phil.
Dude,
No,
just
I've
stop
nothing more
asking
to say right
questions
now.
or you're gonna get banned. Just stop
I think
asking
each of us have our
questions or you'll
own
get banned.
talents that our cultures produce, and it's worth negotiating what we allow. You know, clearly Asians are better at math. You know, the Jewish people are doing Hollywood stuff, etc.
But that is also a funny way of looking at it, though. Wait, hold on, Colin, hold on 1 second. It is a funny way.
It's funny that,
hold on, I gotta say my.
Well, people
in Europe.
People do
hold on.
stereotype for a reason, I think.
When it comes
there's a
to
basis in it. But
no, but hold on. When it comes to a lot of hold on.
Twitter is
I gotta say no, but I gotta say the
They've
final.
banned whole
I gotta say the final thing on
That's
here, because my problem is that a lot of these. No. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything bad. I'm not gonna say anything bad. What I find is that when there are successful groups out there, they end up being successful in whatever is the spirit of the times. So, for example, you had people out there like both Trotsky as well as Lenin, who are both successful in capturing the spirit of the times and going with it. And if you have a situation when people end up being hired, both who are of this particular group or not a particular group, you're going to look first at the particular group. You're not going to look at what is this particular culture that they're being swept in. And not only that, but you're completely going to ignore all the telltale signs that don't fall into your little 4chan thread mythology with the infographics. And that is my big concern today, is I think that people are rightfully so looking at so many problems out there, but they're misdiagnosing why those problems are occurring. They want a scapegoat just like they do all the time.
It's because we all share a common public square.
Lev, I completely agree with that. Point. I think that
Hold on, one at a time.
I think that the point that you just made about both accessibility and the dominant culture is extremely accurate to what, again, my friend WVG is saying here. I fully recognize that, as a Jewish person myself, or someone that it's a matrilineal religion. My mother is Jewish, so technically, as much as I may claim to be unaffiliated, I am Jewish. Doesn't matter. That's just the truth. But rather, the extremely accurate point that he made. I mean, whether you want to view it from a political standpoint or a socio-religious.
Oh, hold on. It crashed again. That's okay. This is not the end. Let me go in there. Everything is fine. Hold on. What is going on here? Ah, here we go. Everything is fine. Here's the Twitter space. Hey, sorry about that. I am back. The Twitter space temporarily crashed, but everything is fine. We are here, no problem.
It's been crashing for me a lot too. I updated my phone and that helped a lot, so maybe you got to update something.
Just to answer Colin, I would say no, I don't think it would happen because you wouldn't have moral relativism. Like eating away.
What is your moral relativism?
So you wouldn't have to Frank
predominantly Protestant culture. I mean, if Jewish people account for what, like 2% of the world population, and there are, I mean, let's look at the height, the golden era of pornography.
Well, you have to look at the percentage
from this. Well, no, WVG. My point here still stands. That if we are looking at the golden age of pornography, if we're talking the slummiest of 47th Street in downtown Manhattan and Hollywood making, smut films, my point is it's not the 2% of however many Jewish aligned people there are in the world. It's Protestants that are consuming that.
Concentrated. That 2%
right, but no collective exists without the individuals within them, and each person has their own viewpoint. So you're talking about a group of people with an incredibly deep history and deep roots that have had to have a stronger in-group preference.
No, but it's not even so much about the in-group preference right now.
You bring up a great point about in-groups. Why is it discouraged?
Hold on. Wait, hold on. Let me just say one final thing, and then we got to change the subject, because, again, I think Gio is right just for the sake of the stream and YouTube. And once again, look, WVG, I welcome this conversation. We have this conversation here. I am not opposed to having it by any means. In fact, a lot of these conversations tend to arise time and time again. Hold on, I gotta speak right now. Okay? So
yeah, it's all right.
All right, so here is the final, and I know I said final thing before, but here is the final thing that I would say. If we substitute the idea of, like, let's say if we're talking about Jewish people here, if we substitute that group right now for just saying people who have had an incredibly rigorous upbringing when it comes to focusing on education. If we just take that, focusing on education, and not in terms of just, copying stuff down, but actually like a deep focus on being able to excel at whatever you're doing, just having that kind of culture. If that is something that has been passed on, then if we're talking about places where people were included and excluded, you're obviously, back in the day, not going to have a lot of church-going Christian people going into a lot of these, you could say, the opposite of Apollonian, the mercurial industries. There was that book that was written about, what was it called? I don't remember right now, but the point is that you would have people who are of Jewish descent going into those various industries, as well as starting their own hospitals, as well as going into chess, as well as going into pretty much anything you could think of. The fact is that if you were Christians who were forbidden from doing any of the nasty porn stuff, there wouldn't be as much of, you would be held back from doing that, I think probably correctly so. But when you are, let's say, an immigrant group, sometimes you would be in the position where, you've got nothing to lose, you're going to go in this industry. But the problem that I have is that when people bring that industry up, they're completely ignoring the monumental amount of people that instead of going into that industry decided to go into the hospital industry, decided to, like I said before, start their own medical center because they weren't allowed to perform surgery anywhere else, starting any kind of industry you could think of. And so again, this is why I say when you speak about this group, I would rather speak about a group that is just incredibly educated and is going to show that in whatever industry they happen to be in. And of course, you're going to have people who think that because these people are incredibly educated, then we don't trust them, they could only do wrong, and they're only going to look at the areas they don't like. They're not going to look at the hospitals, they're not going to look at the chess, they're not going to look at any of the industries where the Jewish people have contributed an incredible amount to, culturally speaking, contributed specifically to Western civilization. They're just going to be looking at the things that they don't like. And I think that any group is going to have their fair share of horrible people.
Is Empire of Our Own, I believe.
No, that's not the one. It was a different one where it talked about the Apollonian and the Mercurial mindset, where the Apollonians are people who would usually live on, off the land, like the agrarian people, and then you would have people in the periphery who would be trading with them. They would mostly be merchants, dealing with money. And also I find dealing with things, like I mentioned the Geo before, that the Christians did not necessarily want to deal with. They didn't want to do the banking and stuff like that. So I said it would be pretty funny if they would have said, you know what, we don't trust you people with money, so we're going to forbid you from doing any banking. We're going to do our own banking. That did not happen because that was against the Christian doctrine. Well, unless you count the Templars that we were talking about earlier, because they were doing their own. They're doing their own usury.
I wanted to say.
But you see what I'm getting at. Go on.
Go ahead, Crocodile.
Do you think there's a way that all of us can get along here? Like not us in this room, but culturally, I mean, because we just really are not getting along at all.
Here's what I would say. This goes back to the Kabbalist guy, because this Kabbalist guy, he also actually mentioned that Jews do have a special...
Knights of the Round Table. Like I feel like you guys are kind of doing things here in the spirit of that.
We're trying, like with
why
BTR.
Do you think that's... Yeah,
no, but there is a
great.
strange thing though with the Jewish people, according to this Kabbalist. What he says, and I'm curious what you guys think. His take is that the Jewish people have to set an example for the rest of humanity in terms of getting along with each other. Because what a lot of people don't know, like people have this weird idea of the Jewish people all being in it together. While really, if you're talking about so much diversity of thought and incredible amounts of disagreements, you should see like one rabbi speaking with like a rabbi of a different congregation or whatever it's called. They get into incredibly heated debates, not to mention the difference between, let's say, Reform and Orthodox and Ultra-Orthodox and so on and so forth. So this Kabbalist point of view is that the Jewish people are so divided, and if the Jewish people were to stop being so divided and to teach people what it means to actually be united in the sense that I feel like you are a part of me and I'm a part of you, that would be a lesson for the rest of humanity to do the same thing, so that all of us feel like we are all a part of the same source and we should treat each other like we are all extensions of each other.
Has anyone seen the film Pi, stylized as the numerical symbol for pi?
Yeah.
Nope.
Oh yeah, the guy goes crazy with math.
Yes.
That's a great movie.
And he drills into his forehead.
Correct. It's a great film by Aronofsky. It's fantastic, and it's all about essentially the numerical numbers of the Torah, and even more specifically, the spaces that are put between each individual letter in Hebrew. And there are silly, absolutely laughable, could be a TV show, debates between rabbi to rabbi between how many spaces go between each letter. And I find it fascinating to compare that film Pi, again stylized as the numerical symbol, to the film, what was it? It was a Coen Brothers film, Hail Caesar. And I think it was released in 2017. Which again, it's a film made by two Jewish men, the Coen brothers, but is a deeply Catholic film. It's fantastic.
I think I've heard of this. Yeah.
I think that the Coen brothers actually make very, very Catholic iconography films in a very positive light, in a very friendly, let's say, composition. But I think most of their films are Catholic central. and it is a meeting place. I do think that there is a brotherhood, if not a we obviously disagree. There are many things of which, let's say, more ardent Catholics might believe about, let's say, democide or the death of Christ, and certainly who the preventers of that death were, and that's a very legitimate criticism, and I understand that. And whether you look at the Romans or the Jewish population of Judea at the time as the main culprits, fine. But I do think that in terms of iconography, in terms of passion, in terms of history, that there is some amount of meeting ground there. I do understand, obviously, for the more ardent Catholics, and the idea of regicide is, or rather democide, is not a meeting ground, is sort of a non-plus. But there is something there. I do deeply believe that, as someone that again grew up in Reformed Judaism but is no longer affiliated, that attracts me deeply to Catholicism, and I think that there is in both strains an idea of mysticism. And I skip Kabbalah because Kabbalah is for blood drinking West Coast idiots, and I mean blood drinking in like the silly sense. I don't actually think they drink blood, but they wear those stupid red bracelets and they listen to Matisyahu, and they think that they are.
Now this is all celebrity bullshit. I'm not a fan of any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if there is a different kind of, if there is a, sorry,
of course, when you get to the real like the angry, like the difference between an angry old Jewish guy and an angry old Italian guy is whether they're arguing about bagels or baguettes. I mean, that's
oh no! I have a lot of thoughts on that I will hold because it's
That's a good one.
It's all about bread. It's all about, you know what? Honestly, I'm not even sure that old Italian guys know about unleavened bread. And honestly, please do not tell them, because when they learn about matzah,
I heard about.
When they learn about, these guys, they got the bread, but they ain't got no yeast in it. Oh, you told me that shit's flat? Oh, it's flat. Oh.
See, if I did an accent, that would be anti-Semitic. Anyways, I wanted to ask you, Carl.
Well,
I have a lot of thoughts about that maybe.
Wait, hold on, Gio. I'm getting my cousin Ezra on the phone. Hold on.
Okay.
Hello.
Here we go.
Oh, lordy.
Oh.
Yes, my name
is that
Bruce.
Ezra Levant? You gonna give me some? I would love if Ezra Levant said, "Hey, do you want to do some stuff for Rebel Media, even though I won't pay you ever?"
By the way, it is interesting. By the way,
listen, I'm sorry, but you know, how much are you gonna be paying me for this? Come on.
Can you say, by the way, can you do like a Jewish mother, like and such small portions? Can you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I went down to the store. You know, I talked to Ezra. You know, I talked to Chaim behind the counter. He says to me, "Oi, look at me. I'm kvetching." And I said, "Just give me some gabagool."
It's like the old Jewishly asked what gabagool is. That's like.
Well, I mean, that is one of the best things. And again, this is my second Sopranos reference. I love the Sopranos, but I do think that in season 3, when they really hit their stride, and there was the whole Jewish, black, Italian mix up, fantastic. One of the best.
Me and my old man, we still quote that episode all the time. He's like, "Yo, Mud, my son was right." I created.
Oh no, I think there's one better, and I for the life of me, I'm trying to remember the character.
No, the Golem. That's season 1, isn't it? I thought that the one really the one, because I thought the one you were referencing was the one with Hesh and the recording industry and all that.
No. I'm referencing the one where Tony, they're in the stables, and Tony is talking. Essentially, he makes like some sort of like anti-Israel like barb. Someone says is something anti-Israel, and one of the old Jewish guys goes, "Oh, wait a minute, let's not talk about the USS Liberty, okay? Come on." No. But jokes aside, I do feel that there is some meeting ground there, and when you really get down to it, whether you're talking about the burning bush or rather even like Jewish mysticism, there is a lot of psychedelics that play a part in that, and for better or worse, I mean, essentially, I think that there is an element of again fear. A fear of losing control, a fear of being powerless, a fear of not knowing yourself, or rather not even knowing your people, and a fear of not being able to come back to reality. I mean, imagine you are walking upon, and it's like, I can't help but reference the Three Musketeers, or rather, no, not the Three Musketeers. What's the movie with, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and
The Three Amigos.
The Three Amigos.
Three Amigos.
Yes, and you come upon the burning bush, and one of the funniest gags in that movie is that they don't react. They see a bush that is burning and singing.
No, it's not burning.
and
It's not burning. It's just singing.
And they don't say a word.
Well, they had the sing along with the animals before.
Because you have to have it in your heart to accept that.
Absolutely.
What would be another Coen Brothers movie you think is deeply Catholic themes?
Oh,
Fresh memory.
Miller's Crossing?
Miller's Crossing
Yeah.
is deeply about Catholic guilt and the Irish, let's say the Irish mob in what I would suppose that's 1930s.
Yeah,
where,
during
like,
Prohibition.
Philadelphia.
Chicago, was it? Maybe Philly. Yeah, I think Philly.
Yeah, but I would also say their most iconographic film, just absolutely spewing with Greek iconography and Roman, and certainly old school like pre-Reformation Catholicism is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Oh yeah, there you go.
Masterpiece, and is certainly
Barton Fink too.
Yes, 100% Barton Fink, which, by the way, is John Goodman's best performance on film. He plays the most menacing and sincerely, I would say, there's a difference between John Goodman and "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" In "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" he plays a member of the Ku Klux Klan, which can only be presumed to be a Southern Protestant, probably a Baptist. And no disrespect to Southern Protestants and or Baptists. I've been to a couple contra dances; they're fine. But in Barton Fink, he's very clearly playing a Kansas City Catholic, and his both understanding of himself and his understanding of the world around him is centralized in his understanding of nihilism isn't the right word, but an almost detachment. And that's not to say that Catholics from Kansas City or St. Louis or anywhere else in the world are detached, but it's a really great character study about how far can you go into, let's say, let's stick with iconography. How far can you go into, the Ghent altarpiece and the amazing pieces of work of Michelangelo and Leonardo and these amazing pieces of Catholic art before you lose touch with what's real? How many times can you see a painted cat before you forget what a cat looks like? And I think that character expresses that in such a sincere way that, like, he doesn't even recognize that he's a serial killer, which in the film Barton Fink he is, because he's a good old boy. He's just a guy from Kansas City. Woohoo! I'm from Kansas City. Yeah, sure, I cut this hooker's head off, but like, whatever. I'm from Kansas City.
Subjective morality.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And thank you for
And
saying
that's what I'm getting at with the round table. Like, we all have a different reality, but it's impossible for any of us to talk. And there's so much resentment about Hollywood. I think the real future is these YouTubers. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but we're talking about psychedelics. The Big Les Show, this dude from Australia, single-handedly created his own story, his own universe. I think he had a couple of friends help him do it, but he really addresses a whole lot of deep shit. He has like a talking Sasquatch, and he's like a Super Saiyan and all this. I think some of these movies that have been made in the past are really deep, but I think things are moving in a direction to where you're having self-individuated people produce their own stories.
Absolutely.
And it's ironic, by the way. Real quick. It's ironic. Oh, I do find though that we tend to speak over each other. So, Colin, speak right now, but then I'm going to reply afterwards. But just yeah.
Boom Shroom, aka Boom Shroom. And this is a bit of trivia. Make it quick. Do you know the longest novel ever written?
I think, isn't it Tale of Two Cities?
Henry Darger.
And it's a bit of a trick question because you have to be as online as I am. It's about 20,000 pages, and it is a fan fiction.
Oh, Fallout New Vegas and My Little Pony. I know that you're talking about.
No, not quite. It's actually Super Smash Brothers. It's Super Smash Brothers Melee fan fiction, written by a Taiwanese immigrant to teach himself English. And it started in 2004. You can Google this. It is 100% certifiably true. It started on Baba Black Sheep, and then he continued it onto a GeoCities site, and then like even beyond that, it's been posted all over.
It reminds me of that Homestuck thing. I think that was one of the longest running stories going too. A friend of mine was way into that Homestuck.
But this is a novel with arcs and tragedies and loss and love between Link and Jigglypuff and all sorts of weird things. And it's
Holy shit.
No, it's not. No, don't get me wrong. I want to be very clear to respect the artist and the author. It's not like he doesn't go into like furry stuff or anything like that, but like it's quite literally him teaching himself how to speak English by writing.
Yeah, it seems like a fun project he did to
And it's
get better.
I think it's still going to this day. The guy's probably 40 and speaks with an accent like, "Hello, how are you?" But
that's awesome.
Yeah, no. Longest novel ever written.
Wow. So, guys, I think we're going to be ending this pretty soon, though, because it's been an incredibly long amount of time. Like, when was the Geo? From 5 o'clock, was it?
From 5, yeah.
From 5 o'clock, this is going on. But I want to thank everybody for joining us here for the psychedelic stream. Gio, who was that guy that went on, the anti-Semitic dude? Who was he? Do you know him?
Oh, he was a follower of mine.
All right,
I
but
wouldn't call him anti-Semite, but
well, no, look, yes, he is, but that's okay. But because I welcome everybody to talk.
According to you and my father, I'm one as well. But anyways.
Well, you can be changed. You know, you could. But anyway, I believe in you, Gio. But
no, you didn't deny it, saying my beautiful friend Gio is not an anti-Semite. You just went for, well, you know, you could change.
You are a beautiful friend. No, I think here's the thing, Gio. You're Italian. You're Italian, so you cannot be anti-Semitic by default. If there is something
thank heavens.
If there is something that's going on, then it'll be addressed later on. But again, I thought it was a very interesting conversation. Despite that, again, for the future, we're only going to be accepting people that we know and we trust into the conversation, especially from that particular side. But at the same time, I do appreciate the fact that these things were able to be addressed as they have been. I have to have like you remember in The Simpsons, there was that like time since last accident. You know, there should be like time since this thing
great episode.
Yes, time since this particular thing is brought up.
Stream with Zoomer Theos. I wasn't expecting that. That's crazy.
That was pretty fun.
Hey, can I make one more point on psychedelics?
Sure.
I just want to bring up I want to bring up James Joyce and his book Spin Against Wake, because we've been doing so much discussion
Nice.
of the book, and that book is it's like almost impenetrable, basically, and there's still people that debate and go over it all the time to this day. But I feel that, like the power of language or information, and you can extend this into our discussions about Hollywood and movies and all this stuff. It is possible for symbolism and aesthetic, and audio, like audio and visual media to be psychedelic and to induce all kinds of different altered states. So I think that really
and
expands
take on a life of its own.
Oh, absolutely. Have you seen King Salmon? Have you seen Uncut Gems?
Oh,
No,
God.
Uncut Gems.
That's a nuclear red pill right there.
Uncut Gems is a nuclear red pill that will absolutely make you, first off, anti-Semitic, and secondly, want to buy diamonds, and thirdly, want to gamble your entire mortgage. And thirdly,
That's actually based on my life.
And thirdly,
that movie was based on my life.
It is an incredible film because it starts at 100 and never stops. It is this incredible piece of art by the Safdie brothers. Fantastic. And if I could also just say,
I think a lot of this stuff.
If I could say one last thing,
You're right.
if I can say one last thing, I want to say, firstly, Lev, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on. Really enjoyed the time.
Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for letting me riff on Catholic iconography, Jewish iconography, and certainly the Coen brothers and their coinciding, if not correlated, Catholic films.
Coinciding, get it?
Yes.
Oh, God.
And
well, I want to say one thing to you, Carter. Colin.
What's that?
What's up? Go ahead.
Repeat the question, Gio.
Gio.
Oh, I just wanted to say when you were. Oh shit! Sorry. Well, when you were talking about your indigenous friend, I wanted to. I've thought about this idea. I actually wanted to write something on it. But I don't know if I can because in Canada that we have let's just say it's contentious. But
Sure.
I think that when people talk about things like this is often overlooked aspect. When people talk about things like intergenerational trauma, I think that to me it's just as much of a metaphysical claim, not in the sense that you discount it, but in anything, it's even to me it strengthens a lot of when you're talking about these issues of intergenerational trauma. I don't think it's something. And again, unfortunately, us in the political right, we sort of like hand wave it away, right? But I think it is something to be looked at through the lens of the metaphysical, in that.
Oh, definitely.
In that someone's past, it's not even just a genetic memory. It's like something that, in terms of a lesion upon one's soul, I think that there is a claim to be made there, and I think that's something that among the activism and all the other indigenous issues, I think that's something that's often overlooked.
It's just interesting because from the perspective of like the Pentecostal deliverance minister who delivered me, she was a Pentecostal Christian, and Pentecostals get a bad rap for being like really culty and stuff like that. But honestly, like from a metaphysical perspective, if you do think of the devil as like the demiurge, and if you think of demons as like archons or like like beings that aren't with the light, like beings that aren't organic, like inorganic beings, it makes sense from a perspective of the metaphysical, because it's almost like waking up, like getting those demons out, getting all of those archons out of you is sort of like escaping the matrix. But unfortunately, like I came back to my hometown, like I was all the way in Phoenix when I did this, and like I was going to go to LA and be a writer and like all these things, but then I smoked weed again, and then they all came back like as a legion, and then like I had to get another deliverance done, and like I'm still fighting this like it's almost like I'm stuck in a cage because I'm not reaching my full potential. I'm not truly awake because I'm almost getting trapped by these inorganic beings, like whether it be the Greys or some kind of like. And I sometimes think of the demiurge as almost like a super intelligent AI, like the devil could be that.
Riley, to both go off of your question and Dio's question, a fantastic segue. Thank you, Riley, for saying that. So again, going back to Dio, your question, or Gio, pardon me, your question about my indigenous friend, and I think this relates. We had a guest on our property. Again, I work at a resort and spa, who found a stick out in the woods. I mean, we're talking a literal stick. And she said, "This stick is talking to me. It's beautiful. I love its design, its curves. I mean, it looked nice. It's an ash juniper tree, so it's got some nice like waves in it, what have you." Anyways, so she took it to the clairvoyant. The clairvoyant said, "Oh, you got to do this with it." And she took it to the tarot card reader, and you got to do this with it. And she took it to my friend, the indigenous American, and looked at it and said, "Yeah, it's a stick. Put it back in the woods."
There you go.
Yeah, sometimes with that metaphysical, you have to leave the meta, keep the physical.
Yeah, what has a meaning? This stick is some ridiculous thing out there that it's just random. Why did she get so excited about it?
Oh, because she, granted, she
where,
was an affluent. She was
Because,
an affluent
it's not
woman
necessarily
from
that God is a devil. The devil is a god, but like more so that the Bible truly is an infallible book because of the fact that God is God, the devil is the devil. It's pretty much
God
cut and
gave the
dry.
devil a job, and people forget that. Like
Yes.
in the Book of Job. So the way I see these psychedelics, because I've done a whole bunch of them. I've done DMT and mushrooms and LSD and stuff. But what I found is the demons that were presented to me, it was an opponent for me to fight, and either I could overcome it or keep complaining about it forever ad nauseum and become a victim. And that's a controversial way of looking at things, but
that's kind of like
me.
But that's kind of like the as above so below idea of everything, all the attachments that we have to receiving pleasure. All of that is in a certain way the adversary that we're fighting against. We are fighting against an aspect of ourself that's reflected reflected everywhere. Exactly, I agree.
I would
listen,
say it's
guys,
a balance. We got to balance ourselves out.
Well, I got to balance myself out right now.
I want to try and give.
You got to also give your demons a job, otherwise they'll run away.
Yes. Listen, guys, we gotta go right now. This is okay. King Salmon Fish, you got the last thing, and then we really gotta go.
I was going to say that stick was basically a psychedelic to that woman. You want to go back to women and snake-shaped things. I think the thing we're getting at here is, well, at least I am, is pretty much everything is psychedelic, and it actually is like a real big problem because it's like with the seriousness that you take psychedelic, like you wouldn't necessarily suggest that somebody kind of thing because it's so sketch. Like that's almost true of everything. Like everything is just drugs. Like you're made out of drugs. All the shit at Walmart is drugs.
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge you can undertake, like climbing Mount Everest. We don't stop people from climbing Mount Everest. It's like, no, you don't understand how dangerous it is.
Yes.
If somebody wants to do that, great. Like, let's cheer them on. If they make it to the top, maybe they can tell us what the view is like.
Listen, guys. Okay, this is it. Guys. All right, hold on. I have to mute everybody right now because there are too many people speaking and we do have to go. So I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I'm going to do a tweet tomorrow out about this. And watch the initial stream, okay? Go to breaktherules.tv. This is where this whole thing has been live streamed. It says on the top, live streaming on breaktherules.tv. Subscribe to breaktherules.tv. And lastly, for all the people in here, if you want to support Break the Rules growing and getting more people on, what you need to do is you need to become a patron. Patreon.com/breaktherules. That is where you go. And once you become a patron, and that link you could see over here in the chat as well. Once you become a patron, you are going to get a lot of wonderful gifts for $10. For $5. You are going to get access to the Patreon episodes, the Patreon streams rather. You are going to get MP3s of the episodes after they come out, before they come out to everybody else. What else are you? Tux loves your poor Lev. Yes, poor Lev. I've been sitting, standing this whole time. I didn't even have time to work out today because I was fidgeting around with StreamYard trying to get it. But anyway, what else do they get? For $30, no, for $20, you get
And we're gonna have
beautiful
spaces
magnets.
again soon.
Yes, we are. And hopefully we're going to have spaces only on streams that start at like 1 p.m. or something. This is way too late, but I appreciate everybody being here. And $30 gives you a beautiful print from Geo. $50 gives you custom wooden magnets. And did I mention $20 gives you wooden magnets? Well, it does. So you got a lot of great stuff here. Patreon.com/breaktherules. This is how you support this whole thing. So thank you very much for watching. Follow me on Twitter at LevPo. Follow Geo, Disharmonious, Heretic, Crocodile, all the great people that we've had here. So take care, everybody. Mwah! Good night, everybody.
God bless.